For the second time on the vPub, we're going to head over and explore some of Scotch whiskies, island distilleries. You might remember the first time that we covered this, we covered two distilleries from Orkney, Scapa and Highland Park. But we also looked at Isle of Raasay, and I'm trying to remember the fourth one that we did now as well. I can't remember what it was now. We did Isle of Raasay. That'll come to me while I roll the introduction. I apologise. Regardless, we're going to cover another four tonight. We're going to focus on another island that's got two distilleries on it. That's the Isle of Arran. And we're going to look at two quite odd distilleries, I have to say. Tobermory on Mull and, of course, Jura at Craighouse on the Isle of Jura. That's where we're going to focus tonight. But what we're going to try and do is dive down into these distilleries a wee bit more. Try and understand the spirit and try and understand what they bring us as malt whisky fans. Some more evocative islands, or at least that's the plan. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you in a second. Of course, I've remembered the other distillery that we did before. It was the Isle of Raasay and the Isle of Harris. We did Harris in the last islands session alongside Highland Park, Scapa and Raasay. Apologies for a brain fart. This comes with age, I suppose. Anyway, hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the vPub. Welcome to Thursday night. Hopefully, that's the only wee error or thing that I'm going to forget tonight. It's very unlikely, though. I hope you're all doing very well. It's nice to have you here for another wee session where we just kick back and relax a wee bit and think about all things whiskey. A wee bit of a sacrosanct time, whether you're participating live with everyone here that's tuning in or whether you're picking this up on the replay. I'm very, very grateful to all of you. I look forward to these sessions. They're my kind of ring-fence time where I can just give everything and focus everything on enjoying some drams with fantastic folk, the fantastic whiskey community that are out there. I think there's a magical thing about island distilleries. If you've ever visited Scotland to visit distilleries, and if you've ever thought about taking tours or whatever, it can be real fun. It can almost feel like a bit of a pilgrimage. Regardless of where you go, quite honestly, as long as you have a good experience and a good tour and you get to touch where the place is, where the whiskey's made, the place itself, then it can be real fun and it can have a kind of magical feeling to it. With island distilleries, I argue that it's a wee bit more magical than that because you have to make more of a pilgrimage. You have to take a ferry. Perhaps you maybe take a flight if you're flying to Orkney, Shetland, or if you're going over to Islay, of course. But most of the time you have to cross water. You can go to Skye by using the bridge. You can stay on the road, of course, but you're still crossing water. And that kind of gives you, I feel, an extra sense of remoteness. And I also feel like when we're enjoying island whiskies, if you allow yourself the folly, you can go with that whiskey. You don't need to physically travel there. You can enjoy these almost strange phenomena that we have in Scotland where we have all of these remote islands producing whiskey. It doesn't make any sense, not from a production perspective, not from a manpower perspective, not from a logistics perspective. It's odd, it's inefficient, isn't it? A lot of these West Coast islands, a lot of these Northern islands, they're no use for growing grain. So why are these distilleries even there? It's quite an evocative thought, isn't it? And of course, it's all down to the legacy of illicit distilling. That's where it all comes from, back when remoteness was required in order to hide from the taxman, when it was all about illegal, illicit distilling. The romantic days of the smuggler and that type of thing. We'll maybe touch on that a wee bit tonight. But for me, these things are well catered for now. You know, we can get grain onto the islands. We can get whiskey back off the islands when the ferries are running. Reasonably easy. And there's a lot of distilleries in existence on the islands. Back at the start of this century, as the year 2000 ticked across, there was only 5 island distilleries outside the 7 distilleries that existed at that time on Islay. 12 in total. Well, now we've got 10 on Islay. We're not going to focus on Islay tonight. It's all Islay's got its own region, of course. But outside of those 10 distilleries operational on Islay, we've got 16 island distilleries. That's quite a lot, especially when you consider there were only 5 at the turn of the century. In fact, we've seen an explosion in distilling right across Scotland, but more so on island distilleries. So I want to continue this exploration with part 2, cover another 4 distilleries. There may be a part 3, but I think we'll do part 3 when we've got some more whiskey on hands. We might have something from the likes of Tyree, for example. Maybe we could have something from some of the newer distilleries that have not released anything yet. But I think these 4 distilleries that we're going to cover tonight warrant some attention on the vPub. Anyway, before we get into all of that, I'll welcome you all. Hope you're all doing very well. I hope you've got a dram in your hand. Maybe it's an island dram too. Cheers. And I'll do what I always do. I'm obviously trying to pick up the orange. I'll try and pick up anybody that types at Aquaviti or Aquaviti, and I'll try and stay in touch with you throughout tonight. Welcome, some of you beautiful whiskey folk, dedicated barflies. How are we all? Anthony Lambert is here. Good to see you, buddy. Saying Aquaviti, good evening, chapettes. Great to be in live tonight. Looking forward to this tonight. As I adore Arran and Lagg, and we'll pour a couple of those tonight. Fantastic, Anthony. Thanks for being here, and thanks for going along on theme and getting into the spirit of things. Good to have you. Island Hopper Stuart, perfect name for tonight, Stuart. He's saying Aquaviti, the island sounds like my kind of subject. Only Coll and Tyree left. Then I've visited all the major islands. That's amazing. So it's not just a name you've picked, it's an activity too, Stuart. Good to have you, buddy. I've never been to Tyree or Coll, or I can imagine there's dozens of islands you've been to I have not touched. Michael Wood is saying, hello to absolutely everyone that's in tonight. Great to be here with you. Great to have you, Michael. It's wonderful to have you in, buddy. Have you brought the chimpanzee to play along for the quiz at the end? David Lorenko is saying, evening, the best unofficial region, I guess, lol. And it is an unofficial region. David, I'm glad you're pointing that out. Nice to have you in. That's David from Portugal. The islands in my head are a 6th Scotch whisky region, but it's not an officially recognised region by the SWA. Most of the islands that we're going to cover tonight, 3 of the 4 distilleries we're going to cover tonight are in the Highland region. And most of the islands, apart from Islay and 1 of the distilleries we'll cover tonight, Lagg, is all in the Highlands region. So we've got Highlands, we've got Speyside, we've got Lowlands, we've got Islay and Campbelltown. That's the 5 recognised regions. I think a lot of enthusiasts are like me, and they think about the islands as a different, almost like a different 6th additional category. Hello and good evening, Barflies and Hair Eye, says Luna Arran. Fantastic, Luna. I know you're back in Germany now. I hope you had a wonderful time while you were visiting Scotland. And I did notice that your countryman Doc is in tonight. I don't know if he's still in Scotland or if he's back home. I just hope that the weather has treated him good too. I know you got some sunshine, Luna. Road to Drama is here. Alberto from Italy. Good to see you. Saying good evening, Barflies. Good evening, Aquaviti. Dropping in for just a short while another early start tomorrow. But I look forward to catching up on replay on the weekend. Thank you so much, Alberto. I know how it is on a Thursday night. Friday's still a school day for most people, right? We're working, we're doing whatever we have to do. But it's nice the people that can drop in. And when you can't, Alberto, I'm so grateful that you can pick it up on the replay, my friend. Nice to have you, buddy. And of course, the chat jumps. A huge jump, actually. I'll scroll up a wee bit and see if I can catch people. Donald Stewart is here. Donald, I don't know if I've welcomed you before, buddy, but it's nice to have you in. He's saying, evening, Aquaviti. Hi, Roy, and hello to all you good whiskey folk. Heading back to Islay again soon. Donald, I'm a wee bit jealous. It's been a wee while since I've been over in Islay. A couple of years, I think. Hope you have a blast when you get there. Arnie Tiger is saying, interesting topic again. Well, I hope so, Arnie. I'm going to try and make it interesting. It's just me and Moan sipping from glasses of whiskey. I'm going to talk about 4 distilleries that I feel have their own justification to be interesting. Jerry Miller is saying, good evening, Roy. Good to see you, Jerry. Hope you're keeping well. My pal Jimmy Jazz is here. I've actually got Jimmy Jazz bottle off to the side. Might make an appearance tonight. He's saying, good evening, Aquaviti. A lovely 20 degrees C in Boston. And a 24-year-old Jura in the glass. I wonder if it's the same Jura that you left here, Jimmy. Sean Causer is saying, some on theme, Lechick Sinclair series in the glass tonight. Perfect. That's the Rioja, isn't it, Sean? Hope you're well, Roy. I am. While we are looking at Tobermory Distillery, Sean, we won't be dwelling on the Lechick side of things. I suppose we'll touch upon it. We'll talk about it, of course. But Lechick gets a lot of coverage on the vPub, doesn't it? Tobermory less so. So we'll talk a wee bit about that tonight. But you're perfectly on theme, buddy, and it's nice to have you in. Whiskey Liberation Front. That's Lee Jade down in sunny Wiltshire. He's saying, hey, Roy, Aquaviti and wonderful barflies. Just popping in quickly to say hi. I've got an early start again tomorrow, so hopefully I'll catch over the replay on the weekend. Stay safe and cheers. Lee J, now that you're picking us up on the replay, it's nice to welcome you in, my friend. I hope the working week was good to you, buddy. Helly is here saying, good evening, Aquaviti and all the barflies. Great topic tonight. Would love to visit Arran in the future. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my visits to both Arran, Lochranza, and the most recent visit I had was over at Lagg. And I would recommend it to anyone. People talk about Arran being a little bit like Scotland in miniature, and I can see exactly where that comes from. Tunnel Amendi. I don't know if that's the first time I've welcomed you in, my friend, and I'm probably making a mess of the pronunciation of your name. I'm doing Tunnel Amendi. Let's go with that. Evening, just stumbling in here with a dram in my glass already, a signature 100 proof Orkney, 2010, 14-year-old edition number 38. Wonderful stuff. Fantastic that you've discovered the value that's coming out from the signature 100 proof series. I'm glad you're enjoying it, my friend. And it's nice to have you in participating on theme tonight as well. Whiskey Weekend Drama is saying, do you have the new Lagg Aquaviti, the Palo Cortado? No, I do not. That would have been wonderful to have for tonight. Palo Cortado seems to be a very fashionable, quite a trendy, in-demand cask. So I can see why they've done that. I didn't manage to get my hands on any of it. I couldn't even find a price for it. But I've got enough Lagg to be getting on with and enough to share with you tonight. No problem, Harrow. Good to have you in, buddy. Yeah, that's a dram, a very generous dram. Come in. Let me grab that. I don't want to miss that. James DeJulio is celebrating being a barfly for 29 months and officially 41 months. Haha. Okay, so you've had a break in the support. Thank you, James, for your support for 41 months. Jay Vaughn is celebrating being a member for 49 months, saying finally here live instead of via replay. It's fantastic to have you, buddy. I appreciate whether you can pick it up on the replay or live, but if it's rare for you to get in live, it's nice to have you tonight. Danny Ebbington is here. Good to see you, Danny. I hope you're keeping well. He's celebrating being a member for 41 months. And even Roy, favourite night of the week, Slantia, Danny. That's very nice of you to say so. It's nice to welcome you. And I think, Danny, you're up in Speyside, aren't you? I think you're fairly local. And here, I'm so glad that you're in, Robert, and you've bought me a dram as well. He's saying, it's crazy. So Robert Primo is a name that I've seen in here for years and years and years. It feels like since the beginning of the vPub, certainly, the beginning of the channel. And I was at the Whiskey Club on Tuesday night, and I'm sitting chatting away, just talking nonsense, whiskey nonsense to whiskey pals. And a fellow walks up and says, hello, Roy, my name's Robert. And I stood up to say hello and things like that. And as I heard his accent and things, I started to put it together, and I wondered, is this Robert Primo? And then I worked out that it was. It was just amazing to see him after all of these years. An absolute privilege and a surprise, Robert, to bump into you. He's saying, thanks for the hospitality and dram. Tuesday at the Bon Accord, meeting you, Roddy, Scotty, Julie, Stefan, Sean, and others in that merry troop was a surreal first night in Scotland. Cheers. And of course, I had to leave early. I had a reason I had to be home early for my family on Tuesday night. So I couldn't get to hang out with you as long as I'd like to have, Robert. Maybe if you're coming back through the Central Belt on the way home, you can get in touch, and maybe there might be a chance for us to hook up for a wee bit longer. It was wonderful to see you, and thank you for all of your support over the years, Robert. It's nice to have bumped into you at the Bond. Brilliant stuff. David Hong has bought me a dram as well. No comment is normal for my pal from the States, David. but he bought us a wee dram. So I'll raise this glass to all the barflies that support the vPub by joining the YouTube membership and keeping it all completely ad-free. That's where they get access to all of those wee whiskey-themed emoji too. I'll raise a glass for my friend Robert and my pal David as well. Cheers, welcome everyone. It's jumped again, trying to keep up. I'll keep up with the chat throughout tonight. Scott Matheson is saying, will you be mentioning any smaller islands like Luing? I don't even, Scott Matheson, so you're speaking about a distillery or distilling. I mean, that's the only islands that I'll be interested in. The only 4 I'm going to mention tonight is the ones I've mentioned. The 2 that's on the Isle of Arran, Lochranza and Lagg. And then 2 kind of more... we talk a lot about Leitchik, as I say, but Tobermory, from Tobermory Distillery in Isle of Mull, doesn't get a lot of time in the vPub, and Jura certainly doesn't get a lot of time on the vPub. So we'll be looking at Mull and Jura as well, but we won't be going anywhere further field than that. Like I say, that there could be a potential third part for this series, maybe even a 4 in the years to come. We never know. Only virtual drinking tonight then, Aquavite. For you, is that right? I am certainly very much in real life drinking tonight. I'm enjoying a wee dram tonight. Kids have finished school, so there's no requirement for me to ferry children in the morning as well. That said, I've got 6 empty glasses in front of me, numbered. Well, not numbered, but I've counted 6 glasses. So as long as I don't fill a dirty glass, I can keep tabs on the amount I'm having tonight. Luna, if you're keeping off the booze, I hope it's for a good reason. Tunel saying, thanks for the effort pronouncing my YouTube nickname. No worries, it's German for tunnel at the end. Okay, so it's Tunnel Amende. Fantastic, and it's good to know that you're in Germany. He said, I'm Chris, and I've been here on and off. I love your work. Chris, it's wonderful to welcome you in. Thank you for taking the step to have a wee chat. We've got a lot of barflies in Germany. Fantastic place to go visit. I love to go visit there at least once a year for whiskey fun. And it's nice to meet and welcome another German. Reb Mordecai is in. Good evening, Aquaviti. Had a great time touring the English distilleries, but I'm going home on Sunday. Reb, I think your timing to visit the UK this year, for weather-wise, maybe a bit hot and sticky sometimes, but you're used to that, I'm sure, was uncanny. You've had hopefully fantastic weather as well as fantastic distillery visits. My friend Glenn Duncan is saying, looking forward to this episode. Scapa, always been a huge fave, and hopefully Tobermory and the Herach from Harris. Glenn, the previous vPub, I covered Scapa, and I covered a Harris on the first part of this. So tonight is we're not going to be going there. But while we've got Glenn in the chat tonight, can anybody see what's over my shoulder here? I'm going to have to be careful with the book here. This is a very, very, very old book. I almost feel like I should be holding it only with white gloves. It's a little bit frail along the spine, but it's in really, really quite good condition, considering that this book dates to, and I'm going to open it and let you know, 1881. 1881. Over at, what's that, 144 years old? Would that be right? This book is a hydrometer tables book. So it's literally just a book full of tables in order to calculate this is all based on temperature, in order to calculate the alcohol strength of spirits. So you know then what's in this box. Now, I don't know what kind of wood this would be, but I think this is potentially mahogany. But you can see it says Sikes Hydrometer, as used by the Inland Revenue. So in here is the original brass apparatus. I need to open these little catches here that they would have used in distilleries up and down the country and all over the place. Look at this thing. It smells, it looks just wonderful. It's so evocative, it's so nostalgic, it's amazing. So if I show you what we've got here, we've got a guide rule here in the top. I've not used this yet, and I haven't studied or learned how to use it properly. I imagine I'm going to need a decent amount of liquid in some kind of container in order to do so. But here's the hydrometer itself. So I guess it's going to sit in the liquid, and this would float. And depending on various conditions, you can add weights to the thing. I've not actually tried this. Can we try it now? Yeah, you just add weights to the bottom of it like this, and it floats. And there's a little guide here. I'm hoping the camera can focus on that. Let's see. Maybe you can just see the guide there. It needs to not see my eyes to focus. I'm not sure if that's going to work. I think it was working at first. Maybe you can just see the measurements there on the etched into the brass. A fascinating thing, but not just a piece of whiskey history for me, but because I've got this infinity cask outside with all the dregs and things, all the bottle tips and various things that's gone into that cask, I can now potentially keep tabs on the alcohol strength of that barrel. Glenn Duncan, thank you very, very much for thinking of me. Thank you for your generosity. And it was a wonderful surprise to receive. I just need to make sure it's looked after. Pierre is saying, evening, barman. Great to have you behind the bar, Island Bar tonight. Let's think of it like that, Frank. It's always wonderful to have you, buddy, as always. Jeff Whisky, that's my pal Jeff. He's celebrating being a member of Barfly for 17 months, saying cheers to you, Roy. Right back at you, Jeff. He just caught your most recent video on the third part of your Whiskey Loch series. Great stuff as always. Great thoughts in there as well, Jeff. Anybody that wants to catch that series, it's really quite cool. Head over to Jeff Whisky channel to pick that up. Ted Brooks has sent 20 Aquaviti gift memberships. Thank you so much for your generosity, Ted. That means that there's 20 random barflies in here tonight that have picked up a barfly membership, and you're keeping everything here ad-free. Cheers. I hate ads. And Helly's bought me a dram as well to say islands should have their own region. I think that's true. But I wonder how much difference it would actually make. If enthusiasts, and if we decide it's kind of our own separate region, then I think that's probably good enough for us, right? Glenn is saying a relic from a relic. You're not a relic, Glenn. You're one of us, my friend, and it's great to have you in from Australia as well. Gerben is here from the Netherlands saying, Aquaviti and all barflies, good evening. Jimmy Legg is in too. Good to see you, Jimmy. Hell's Wood is here too. Michael Wood, I've already welcomed. He said, I saw one sell at a local auction yesterday. I should have bought it by. I think there's probably quite a few of them around these things. Because there would have been, it wasn't just a case of one for each distillery, there would have been a lot of these around, and not just in distilleries, but in labs and all sorts of other places too. Fastcraft is saying, seeing this instrument, I'm reminded how very much steampunk whiskey actually is. It does feel a wee bit steampunk, doesn't it, with the brass and things like that. Jeff is saying, cheers, Aquaviti. I had it drop the day I found out about Glengoyne. We'll have to milk the topic further. That's right. I mean, it's people are making a big deal about it. I suppose it is a big deal, but Ian MacLeod Distillers went from 26 million in profit for 2022 to 23, I think it was. And then 23 to 24, they dropped to 14 million or something like that. I mean, the positive spin there is they are still in very, very healthy profit. Ian MacLeod have got challenges ahead because they've attempted a roadmap of premiumization that has only worked to a certain extent in certain areas. And I think they've lost a lot of their core foundation, the people that used to really love their products, people like myself, and we've disengaged with it a bit as we saw them disappear down the premiumization route. So they've got some work in order to come back and re-engage with the foundations again and things like that. And I think it's going to be a lot of kind of integrity thinking and things like that rather than packaging and gloss and messaging. Sharmilla Souza saying, good evening, Aquaviti and Barflies. Good to see you again, Sharmilla. Always nice to welcome you in. I hope you're doing well. And I think what I'm going to try and do tonight is just take just natural breaks in between speaking about the distilleries. And welcoming all of you and interacting with you throughout tonight. Tunnel has bought me a wee dram in euros, a generous dram. Thank you so much. He's saying, here's to me stumbling in and out of the vPubs for a while now and giving out a round for my unknown pals. These unknown pals are just pals. that you don't know yet, aren't they? That's like what they say. What is it they say? Strangers, friends that we don't yet know. And Hakan, how are you keeping, Hakan? It's nice to welcome you in, buddy. It's been a wee while, I think, since I've welcomed you in. Got to meet Hakan in Glasgow last year, didn't I? He's bought me a wee dram as well. So to my new friend in Germany, Tunnel, and to my old pal, Hakan, thank you both for your generous drams. Cheers to you both. Thank you all. Okay, let's get on with the first distillery, shall we? How are we doing for time? I'm going to start with the whiskey I've got in my glass. I've got quite a few official bottlings from this distillery, and they all have a similar tale. They get opened, they get tried, and then they'll get largely forgotten about. And it's a wee bit heartbreaking, because if anyone's ever visited this distillery, it's one of the prettiest places on the planet that you can do such a thing. It's so idyllic. It's kind of built up behind it, but the main front of the distillery's got this kind of whitewashed, cottagey feel. And it's in this tiny, tiny little village called Craighouse on the Isle of Jura. You might remember me opening this bottle a while back, an 18-year-old Jura at 44%. Look at the colour of it, really quite dark. Now, that's not anything suspicious for an 18-year-old whiskey. And the profile is ex-bourbon, ex-Oloroso. I think that's right, hold on. Matured in American white oak, ex-bourbon barrels, and enriched by, so there's no Oloroso, apologies, and enriched by the finest red wine casks. Okay, so we can... enriched by probably some kind of finish, which is odd for 18-year-old malt, but it is what it is. Dark malt cells. So they're either using the red wine to get this dark colour, or far, far more likely, and I say this from an appearance perspective, an experience perspective, and a flavour perspective, far more likely they're colouring it. They're using E150A spirit caramel, which is... problematic for enthusiasts. It doesn't really matter to the general public, but malt whiskey, people have this perception that it should be a dark liquid, and the darker that it is, potentially the more flavoursome it is. And it takes a while, I think, for a lot of us in our whiskey journeys to realise that colour really doesn't mean much. It's got far, far much more to do with flavour and quality and integrity and things. But generally speaking, any importer, any retailer, anybody will tell you that to the general public, to the general whiskey buyer, it's easier to sell a dark whiskey. It's just the way it is. Jura chase this, and they chase it hard. Not just for an 18-year-old, but all of the Jura whiskies are fairly dark in colour. Do I have any other official Juras here? No, I do, but I can't. I'll show you that in a second. And for the vast majority of Jura are pretty much this colour. Over there on the shelf, I think I've got Elixir. I think I've got maybe the 10-year-old for the 10-year-old vPubs that we did, I think, a while back last year. What happens is I pour a dram from it and it just gets forgotten about. Look at how full this is after probably being open for a year. I'm not sure when I opened this. And the second dram poured out of the bottle was only poured tonight. And as I'm sipping it tonight, listen, there's no real horrible, horrendous faults. There's nothing undrinkable about this whiskey, but it's really mediocre in terms of a whiskey flavour experience. There's a real kind of sweet, flat side to it. It's been kind of rounded out and smoothed out a wee bit. Despite being 44% ABV, it's soft and smooth. This is exactly designed to be. It's one of the cheapest 18-year-old single malts you can buy. About 75 to 80 pounds for this 18-year-old. Might be a wee bit more expensive than an independent retailer, I'm not sure. So there's that to be said for it. But I would much rather pay 10, 20 pounds more and get something at 18 years old that's still got integrity, that's not been footered around with, it's not been chill filtered, and it's not had any of that nasty colour added to it. However, we have to remember that Jura, as we sit together in 2025, and this has been true in 2023, 2024, the last few years, Jura has become the best-selling single malt whiskey in the United Kingdom. And the ascendancy is incredible. I've made some notes here. In 2010, 350,000 bottles sold. 4 years later, in 2014, 1.9 million bottles sold. Then, in 2022, which is the latest year I could find any numbers for, 2.9 million bottles. So we're speaking about in 12 years, it's gone from 350k to 2.9 million. That's about a 7-fold increase in bottle sales. So say what you like about their 10, their 12, their 18, the 7-wood. Say what you like about all of the releases that they've had over that time, the Durachzone, the 16-year-old, the Paps of Jura, the Elixir, the Superstition, all of these varieties that they've had over the years. They've done something very, very clever, and they've become the best-selling malt. What I would argue, however, is that their margins are, generally speaking, razor thin. They are selling on price for the most part, almost exclusively selling on price. And when you're selling, when that's the business model, I think it must be tough to keep the margins up. I'm not sure. I'm not involved in the industry at all, as you know. Nevertheless, for everything that I'm going to say when I talk about Jura tonight, we can't not recognize their success in terms of a business concept. Jura's an odd distillery. It was, from its founding in the early 19th century, it was open and closed and open and closed and changed hands and ownership. Like, it's going to be a theme tonight, honestly speaking. But in 1901, James Ferguson took over ownership of it and didn't want anything to do with the distillery. He didn't want to pay anything. He didn't want to pay any taxes. He didn't want it to exist. So he did what was done 100 years ago. They removed the roof, and Jura fell into ruin. That was 1901. It took until 1960 for things to come back alive again. So for virtually 60 years, Jura was in ruins, but it was rebuilt by a joint ownership. There was some whiskey ownership in there, and then a Liverpool shipping company. They got together with a view to bring employment back onto the island of Jura, and they rebuilt the distillery, and spirit started to flow again in 1963. It's quite an interesting story. There's much more depth to it than is appropriate for the vPub, I would say. I'm going to share with you some books if you want to get into not just the Jura, but if you wanted to get into understanding these topics more. Some of the things I'm going to touch upon tonight: opening and closing, local employment, operations on an island or remote island, illicit distilling, the foundations and the history of these distilleries that I'm going to talk about. If you want to get into them, I'll hold up a couple of books throughout tonight and that I would recommend to you. But here's an Ian Buxton book that's been out for a few years. I think this has been out for a bit, maybe a decade now, I'm not sure. You can still buy this. Whiskies Galore, a tour of Scotland's island distilleries. And obviously, throughout the week, I've been dipping in and out of this. There's a significant chapter dedicated solely to Jura in here. And it does go into why Jura exists, how it came to be, the author's opinion and things like that on Jura's in there too. And that in itself is interesting. As well as kind of a hope that everybody has the Malt Whisky Yearbook. They have something different to say on every distillery every year. And something that's always a kind of steadfast thing that I have on hand as well is Charlie McLean's Whiskypedia, which does a wee kind of separate entry for each of Scotland's malt distilleries. So, very, very light, just kind of scratching the surface for most of these tonight. The thing that's really interesting for me about Jura is the fact that we've got this idea that it's been around forever, when there was 60 years where it wasn't just closed, it was in ruins. It had to be rebuilt from scratch. Theoretically speaking, and I don't know what year the Malt Whisky Yearbook will say for Jura. We can have a wee look here. Where is J? Okay, yeah. So they're saying 1810. So the distillery says 1810. But truthfully, the founding year of Jura, the Jura that we know today, the William Delmy Evans designed Jura, is 1963. That's how long it's been going. In more recent years, it's under the ownership, the stewardship of White and Mackay. It's been a wonderful financial and commercial success for Scotch whisky. Certainly in the UK, it remains the butt of jokes for a lot of enthusiasts, and it's heartbreaking for people that love the place and have grown to love the distillery itself. For people that have maybe touched Jura and understood a wee bit more about what it can actually produce, not just stuff for smoothing out, ironing out, and colouring and engineering like this, but the actual malt that it makes there. We're going to explore that in a second. Embossed on the bottle is established 1810, says Jimmy Legg. He's obviously got a bottle of Jura on hand. And it does indeed. On the back it says established 1810, Scotland. Jimmy's right. I'd be surprised if Jimmy Legg had a bottle of Jura on hand. But there you go. It does say 1810. I'm telling you, it's 1963. But a lot of distilleries are doing that type of thing. I'm going to go into some surprising Juras now, not the official releases. Rick Johnson's saying the best ferry ride in Scotland is to get to the Jura distillery, in my humble opinion. You can wait a little while for it. It's a very small ferry, but it just goes backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. There's an even shorter one, Rick, the Corran ferry that you take if you're heading over from the main road to Ardmurchan. Doc is here, McCallum Fine and Rare. Aquaviti, I heard Jura has their own sugar burning facility on the premise to make their own caramel. He's given me a wee wink there, a wee bit of a joke. That's the jokes that I'm talking about that come because we know Jura through this type of product. What we're going to do, though, is I'm going to firstly celebrate their official product. This is a much healthier level in the bottle, right? I've opened this and I've featured this a few times on the vPub. This is an official bottle of Jura. It says established 1810 on the back of this one, Jimmy. It does. It's a standard bottle, the same as the others. But what's not standard about this? What is epic about this? What's exciting about this? Not just the fact that every single label, because of this geometric pattern and design, is unique. No two labels are the same. No, that's not exciting. It's just a wee curious, interesting thing. For me, what's exciting is this is a 16-year-old product. This is perspective number 1. Fruity, aromatic, and coastal, it says. American white oak bourbon barrels finished in Oloroso sherry casks. Great stuff. But what is key here is we've got the age statement. We've got the statement saying non-chill filtered and critically natural colour. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. The only one thing left to check for the ABCDs, and that is the bottling strength. B, 46.5% ABV. So we've got the age statement, 16 years. We've got the bottle strength at 46 or above, 46.5. C for chill filtration. We've got a non-chill filtered statement on there. And D for dye. It's natural colour, no dye added, no fake colouring. Now, this is available everywhere now. This is much more available, and it's pretty reasonably priced now in the UK. 16-year-old product, about, I've seen it in the 60s. It's hovering about the £70 mark. But I put it to you, you know, some people would argue, well, Roy, I can get the 18-year-old for somewhere in the, 70s or something like that. But I would suggest to you, given, look at how much I've enjoyed this bottle versus how much I've enjoyed that. The level betrays it, doesn't it? This is fantastic whiskey. It's not the best whiskey you can buy. It's not the best 16-year-old you can buy. It's not the best 16-year-old island whiskey you can buy, maybe even. But I put it to you that this is the best Jura you can buy, the best official Jura you can buy. It is such a step in the right direction. It is so, so, so encouraging. I doubt that their entire range is going to go in this direction, but this is malt whiskey we're speaking about. It doesn't like to be presented below 46% ABV. It gives the producers challenges. It doesn't need to be coloured. That's an issue of education. I know it's a commercial thing, I know that it really is, but when the story breaks, when people care more and more about natural presentation, when the story breaks that all of these pure and marketed as pure products called single malt Scotch whisky are coloured, that's not going to be good news. That's fakery, especially when we don't even put it on the label that there's colour being added. So what does Jura actually taste like? What if we were to tear away all the colour, if we were to tear away the fact that it's been chill filtered, if we were to go back to the raw product itself? Well, you can pick up independently bottled Jura out there. Jimmy Jazz is in here tonight, and I'm fairly confident this is his bottle. I feel like this is his bottle. I feel like he brought this over to Glasgow in 2023, maybe 2024. I'm not sure when he brought this over, buddy, but this is a 24-year-old Distiller's Art Jura distillery. It's 260 bottles. This is an independent bottling. It looks like a single cask to me. Distilled in February 1991 and bottled, it tells me on the back, I think it tells me it was 2015 bottled. Non-chill filtered, natural colour. Yeah, distilled 1991, bottled 2015. And this is aged in a refill bourbon cask. 24 years in refill bourbon. I've had a couple of drams out of this, and I would say this is good to very good. It's not fantastic. It's not wonderfully complex. It's just solid and good. And it does have a kind of resinous, oily, ever so slightly edging towards a kind of pseudo-industrial type profile. But this is 1991 Jura. So that might hint at the whiskey that they actually make there. But I've bought this. For tonight's session, I bought something that's going to be potentially something much more raw. Something much more kind of standard Jura. I'm looking for my wee knife, but I don't have it here. I might need to use it for this. No, I do have my knife. I've just spotted it over there. Good stuff. What I have here is an inexpensive bottle. I think I paid 40 quid, 45 pounds, something like that for this bottle. Very inexpensive. A 7-year-old Jura from a bourbon barrel. Non-chill filtered. April 2012, bottled in May of 2019. 374 bottles. This is still available for sale. This is a 7-year-old Jura from Master of Malt. Master of Malt, one of the bigger online retailers. I don't know how well they cover international shipping. I've always found the service from Master of Malt to be excellent and things, but I'm obviously here in the UK, so a wee bit easier for me. But this is an inexpensive way for me to try and connect with what a much more raw and natural expression of Jura will be. ABV here is actually surprisingly low. It's at 51% ABV. I don't think it's necessarily cask strength. It doesn't say cask strength on here, so there may be a scenario where it's been at high ABV, high 50s, maybe into the 60s, and the bottlers, the guys at Atom at Master of Malt, have decided that what they might do is bring down the ABV a bit to make it a little bit more palatable. I don't think it says cask strength anywhere. Fairly confident. Nope. So let's get this one opened and see if it's going to give us a clue of what's actually made at Jura. So we know that that's natural colour. You can see just how pale that is. But remember, this is after 7 years. It's a bourbon barrel. It's not. It doesn't say whether it's refill or not, but I would suspect that's consistent colour from a first fill as well. It's probably likely to be a first fill bourbon barrel. but it might be. It could be refill. Let's have a wee nose. As normal with these things, it's a neck pour. It's just me opening the bottle. So what you're going to get is not me sitting down and having an in-depth review here with you, just hanging out with you guys and giving you my first impression from the neck pour. So we've got quite a green apple note here. And I'm led a little bit by the drams that I've had from the 24-year-old, kind of looking for that kind of resinous, slightly oily, almost kind of maybe like a white wine-like note as well. But it's very green apple on the nose, very tart, sharp green apple. It's apple juice. It's very orchard fruit forward, very orchard fruit. And like I say, because I think I'm being led and looking for the oiliness thing, that there is an oiliness thing here. There's also a little bit of a hair lacquer note, like a hairspray, like a floral perfume. It's still, despite those notes, it's still quite clean. And it's quite bright. Outdoorsy, a bit of fresh linen. Floral, definitely. So white flowers and things like that too. Okay, let's have a wee sip. See how we're doing. Cheers, everyone. Very young, very, very clean on the palate. White pepper, a little bit of white chocolate too. But all the kind of fruit forward thing that I was getting on the nose, on the palate, it just comes across as all the kind of fruit that you would get from malt, from new make malt. So the cask has been super light with this. As I taste this, there's a chance it could be first fill bourbon, but there's a good chance it could be refill. The cask has had a very, very light touch here. And I think that that's consistent with most of the notes I've been sharing with you too. Really, so I'm not getting a lot of toffee or caramel, that type of thing. I'm not even getting any kind of coconut notes or anything. There is vanilla, a wee bit of vanilla. Is it vanilla? A casky vanilla, I'm not sure. There is. It's quite like a fondant vanilla, maybe. What's amazing to me about this is how clean it is. And this is distilled in 2012. So theoretically, if you were to pick up a 10-year-old Jura, maybe even a 12-year-old Jura, there's a good chance that the malt that's going to be in that official bottling is a similar vintage, but it tastes nothing like this. Those kind of sugary notes, those odd notes, those tannins, those sometimes challenging, slightly sour, slightly bitter things that we get in Jura, they're not here right now in this young malt. I have to be honest, with 18-year-old, there's not a lot of that either. But at 18 years old, you're looking for a better experience. What would happen? How would you react to me if I did this? If I took that clean, bright 7-year-old Jura at 51% that we know to be all natural and diluted the one that we know to be doctored. I've just rendered an 18-year-old malt 7 years old. Do we care? If it's about flavour, I'm going to add just a wee bit more. So we've now got, I would say, a little over half, maybe not quite 2/3, is going to be the new, younger 7-year-old malt. with about a third or maybe a bit more than that of the 18-year-old. We should be leaving it to Mary for a little while, but let's have a wee go. So on the nose, I think what I'm getting more than anything is the younger spirit. Maybe a wee bit of a kind of coffee note thing now. It's from the 18-year-old, I'm sure. The fruit is not quite as tart and sharp. But let's have a wee sip, and we'll leave it sitting here for a little while. I need to have a play around. I think it's better. I think it's better. What's happened here? I think what we've done is we've taken that kind of flat, gloopy, rounded out, engineered corners, edges, jags knocked off it, that smoothed out Jura 18-year-old, and we've added a bit of vibrance and a bit of youth and a bit of detail into things. Long, quite a sour finish. Still tasting it now, but it's less of that kind of saccharine thing, less of that burnt sugar note thing on the finish, and more of a kind of fruit, sour fruit note. Here's the thing I want to point out about, well, what I've just done and what I'm doing, and the reason I'm persevering with a distillery that's the butt of jokes for everyone. We know that Jura Distillery is an earnest distillery with people working there trying to make the best whiskey they can. We know that what's required of the whiskey that they make is at odds with what they're doing. What they're trying to do at the point of bottling and creating a product to sell is to make something, stack them high and sell them cheap type product for the most part, whether it's the non-age statement stuff, the 10, the 12, whatever it may be. They want something that they can make as cheaply as possible, and that's fine. There's space in the market for everything, of course. The fact remains, however, that Jura is a single malt Scotch whisky distillery, and as enthusiasts, we want it to be as good as it can be. We really do. We all have stories of Juras that we've tried that were really good or really interesting, but if we're honest, we know them to be the exception rather than the rule. So maybe it drives us to play. Maybe it drives some of us to play and do these type of things. This is still a single malt whiskey, but as I say, it's a 7-year-old now instead of an 18-year-old. Be interesting to do that blind, and it'd be interesting to offer it to a pal blind. Give them the 18, give them the 7, give them a mix of the two, play around and just ask them, what would be your preference out of the 3 whiskies? Be very interesting to see, and then try it with a few pals and try and get some consensus. But I think, in my opinion, I've managed to make something that was better than what I had before. I've had 2 more drams in here as Barry Hislop celebrating being a member of Barflies for 21 months. He's saying, good evening, Roy and all. Off to bed. We'll catch up. Thank you very much, Barry. Thanks for dropping by. Thanks for being a Barfly, and thanks for promising to pick it up now that you're back here, Barry. It's nice to have you back again. Christoph has bought me a dram as well. Thank you, Christoph, for your generosity. Saying, looking forward to the weekend and the replay. Have a great time live, Barflies. Thank you very much, Christoph. It's not wonderful to have you in. And Stephen Wilson as well has bought me a dram. No comment from Stephen. He's over in Canada. But Stephen, Christoph, and Barry, thank you all for your generosity and your support. Cheers to you all. Hello, Aquaviti and Whisky Folk, says Ben, Whisky with Molly, all the way from Ireland tonight, tuning in from Ireland. Maybe you've gone back home, buddy. I hope you're there for a bit of a holiday and a feet up time. You deserve it, my friend. I hope you're having a good time. You forgot to chuck it on the floor, Roy. Yeah, it's a reference to Richard Patterson, who has been associated with Jura and White Mackay for decades. but you'll see him cleaning the glass with even quite old Dalmores and throwing it on the floor. Jimmy Legg is saying, very Canadian, that swirl. Have I got a Canadian swirl, Jimmy? Danny Habington is saying, maybe the 16 is the start of more releases, more geared towards the dafties like us. Danny, I have to say, I hope that's the case, because they've called it Perspectives 01, which is suggestive of a series, so that they could bring out potentially more takes on the same. That would be super interesting, because what I'm doing is messing around with things that's been bottled already, right? Trying to recover something that's been diluted. But what they've got there with the Perspective series is the ability to bring examples of what's actually in the warehouses. So you're a mixologist now, all of a sudden, says multi-mission. Roddy would be so proud. Listen, I'm quite happy to mix whiskies quite regularly, whether it's different malts or lots of the same single malt and things like that. I enjoy being playful. By the way, for those of you that are fans of Dramface, and especially the podcast, there's been a long touted lost, quite honestly speaking, recorded at the end of 2024, blending session between Gregor, myself, Gordon and Rob. And we blended Legic 10, Glenmorangie 10, or Glenmorangie 12, what have you, and Glenallachie 10 cast strength. And we had to come up with the ratios that worked best for us. So we did that in our own time, and then we got together to do it on the podcast. That podcast will go out tomorrow to Dramface members, and then at some point next week it will drop public. I want to thank everyone for your patience on the hopefully there's a bit of a bottleneck being cleared now with the Dramface podcasts, and we can start to get a bit more. I think it's suffering now because of my workload. It's been suffering for a long time because of my workload, but hopefully we're at a point now where we can start to see a bit more of a regular cadence on whether it's the Colonials or the original Dramface podcast. So if you're a Dramface member supporting, you look out for that tomorrow. That should drop the blending session one, and it'll drop public for everyone over the course of next week. So yes, there's a lot of playfulness and blending in there too, man. Doodle the Dramarne is saying, finally joining you amazing people tonight after a mad day between holidays in Fife and house hunting in Glasgow, and schmurring in the glass and sitting in the coastal breeze to wind down. Fantastic. Are you tuning in from Fife then, Arnie? Wonderful to have you here. Arnie is a resident creative artist, a German living locally in Glasgow, expat German. A wonderful guy he is too. I'm glad to have you in here. I'm glad you've got your feet up, and I'm glad that you're relaxing. That's what holidays should be about. Falsgraf Class is saying, I am months behind with my podcast at the moment, so I will listen to this one probably in October or so. Well, it's nice that there are some people out there that are not as pissed off as others about the lack of productivity from me on the Dramface podcast. Cheers, Class. Nice to have you in. Andrew Hamaker is here as well, and it's nice to see the wee Dramface logo. It's nice to see that you're remembering it. And listen, Dramface is going very, very well. It's growing like a weed. It's fantastic to see the support. It's fantastic to see people discovering it and sharing it and things like that. Things like the podcast really help that. It's a really symbiotic thing between the podcast and the written daily content. And then obviously the daily content can now start to refer to the podcast again as it starts to get moving again. Sugar Kitty is saying, just in case a few people here live under a rock, check out Dramface here. Thank you very much. Jeff, thank you so much. Well, we've got Jeff in as well. Jeff has sent me some samples. I'm going to, he's done it in a blind way. So I've got some samples in front of me. And for my patrons, I'll do a wee blind challenge, I think, on Sunday night's lock-in. I hinted at it to patrons a few days ago, but it's looking more and more likely that I can do a lock-in with you, which is a vPub, just for patrons, a very quiet, laid-back, no-theme vPub on Sunday night. Thank you all for your support as patrons. I look forward to hanging out with you on Sunday night for the June lock-in. And Dan is in. I think it's Dan, DVDW, isn't it, Dan? I'm now second-guessing myself, buddy. You're also behind on your bottle recycle vids, but we love you anyways. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience. The summer break's coming up. So I know I'm going to need to try and prepare some content for you while I'm away in my hammock for the summer. So the plan there is to do something and from a recycled review flavour. So keep your eye on the feed for that. Dramface is more like grown heather, not a weed. Hashtag Scotland, says Sugar Kitty. I'm very glad that you're in there and enjoying it, Sugar Kitty. I absolutely love it. I love the team. I love the people that talk and chat and make it work every day. The vibes of Dramface is just very, very positive. It's very good. All right. So there we have Jura. I mean, to me, it's an enigma. It's an amazing thing. I think it's one of these weird stories. If you think about the fact that it was ruined and then brought back to life, 1960, 1963, before it's distilling again, just to bring jobs back to the island. Interestingly, as a wee anecdote there, the founder of Whisky magazine's uncle is the guy who founded Jura. I had to make a note of his name. His name's Tony Riley Smith. And it's just a wee aside there as well. And that architect that I mentioned earlier, William Delmy Evans, is also responsible for Glenallachie. And he's responsible for Tullibardine in the Southern Highlands as well. At one point in time, it was believed that he was part of the Milton Duff project. No, sorry, Macduff project. But further reading, I think I've uncovered that it was a project he didn't want to be involved on. It was the opposite. But there's 3 distilleries there that I would consider all of them to be something of an enigma. Glenallachie is in rude health again, and hopefully he's got a very strong future under new stewardship with new ideas. Tullibardine remains a little bit rudderless for the enthusiast. It's a bit strange for us, but they're looking after a different market, doing a different thing. And Jura as well. So the Delmy Evans legacy is quite an interesting one. I would love to see more earnest, integrity forward releases from Jura. I'm telling you now that you have someone here who's a willing participant in that. And if we get more things like perspectives or the 16-year-old there, it doesn't always need to be 16 years old. If we get more of that, we will shout about it loudly from the rooftops. We want to see Scotch malt whisky distilleries succeed. Burkie73, Burkie, good to see you. And how you keep, my friend? He's saying, good evening, Ryan Barflies, nursing a large dram of Castranth, Highland Park, whilst recovering from a dislocated shoulder. Cracking start to the summer holidays. The word you use there is recovering, and that's the key. That sounds a painful thing, Burkie. I hope the Castranth, Highland Park is helping you along the way, buddy, but it's nice to have you in. Sorry to hear. Okay, let's leave that along to the side. Let's leave it to Mary. As we move on to the next distillery, because this is also one of these enigma distilleries, I would have to say. We're going to move to a different island. We're going to move over to Mull. Now, Tobermory distillery for me is, if we talk about that weird history that Jura has, Tobermory is literally all over the place. It's one of there's a few distilleries in Scotland that have really, really patchy histories. And Tobermory on the Isle of Mull has got to have one of the patchiest ever. It's just, its history is full of holes. I was making some notes here. Originally, it's one of the 18th century founded distilleries, 1798 famously, but it was running up until 1837, the majority of that time known as Lagg Distillery. And then it was closed and shuttered down. It was brought back to life in fits and starts over the 19th century. It had a decent run, though, from 1878 into 1930, it running as Tobermory Distillery. Then it was closed in 1930, and it was left to just fall into ruin until an earnest endeavour in the 1970s, the early 70s, obviously one of whisky boom time. And it was running as Lagg Distillery just for a few years in the early 70s before it was shuttered again. And then it had another few years, late 70s into 1982 open, before it was shut down. Famously, it was storing cheese for a long time and nonsense like that with no distilling gear inside. But it came back on stream in 1989. Eventually, it fell in the 1990s and under the stewardship of Burn Stewart, and it started to see a real renaissance under Burn Stewart, and it really took flight in the 2000s when they completely changed their methodology, their focus, what they were doing, a mix between peated and unpeated malt over in Tobermory. The peated malt would subsequently be called Lechik, as we know today, and the unpeated malt would be known as Tobermory. I have to be honest with you, one of the reasons that I was inspired to do this topic, one of the things that kind of shook it out of the the list waiting to be covered was the factoid that dropped in the quiz of last week's vPub, when we uncovered the fact that Leitchick, the peated malt at Tobermory, outsells Tobermory unpeated 2-1. That's incredible to me, especially when I'm not sure what it is now, the regime now, but the peated malt campaign at Tobermory was a much, much smaller window. I think it was only a month or two of peated production versus the rest of the year unpeated. So it's quite incredible to see. In terms of single malt sales, remember that a lot of this malt will be used in blends and various other places, trading and things. But to hear that the peated stuff is outselling the unpeated 2-1, that really made me start to think. And it made a lot of sense to me. We talk about Tobermory regularly. I think you would be hard pushed to find a vPub that doesn't at least have people talking about Tobermory in the chat, or me mentioning it, talking about the Legic 10, the Legic 18, famously, or once upon a time was my whiskey of the year, Legic 18. Spoken about regularly, but it's always the peated side. It's always Legic that we're talking about. So tonight, as we go to Tobermory, and I'll maybe pick up Legic and the peated stuff in a future session of kind of visiting the islands again on the vPub. But tonight, I'm going to focus fully on Tobermory's unpeated malt. Here we have the 12-year-old. You can see I've been getting through this. I've been enjoying this. But I have to say, I think I picked this up a number of years ago. This has been in the collection. This has been on the vPub shelf on the library for quite a long time. Wonderful, wonderful presentation here. It tells us in green letters up the side that it's non-chill filtered and 46.3% ABV, 12 years old. It doesn't tell us on the bottle that it's natural colour, but we believe it to be so. The 12-year-old replaced the Tobermory 10 a few years back. I don't know when I go back to. I think it was about 2018. I'm just guessing now that the 12 replaced the 10-year-old. And the majority of people, there are some people that preferred the 10 and still prefer the 10 to this day, but the majority felt this was a move in the right direction. A couple of years of maturity extra added on here, a bit more richness, a bit more softness, a bit more cask intensity, a bit more fruit. To my mind, I felt that on balance, this was a positive step. Let's remind ourselves what this wee Tobermory is, just by popping it in a glass and having a wee teaspoon of it. Oh, very pastry, vanilla custard cream, vanilla, that type of thing, yellow, malty biscuits. Patisserie, it's amazing to do. Maybe it's because it's been this level in a bottle for so long. After the other ones I've been nosing tonight, this is really, really bright and communicative. Drizzled toffee sauce, apple turnovers, vanilla, cake, Madeira loaf, Madeira sponge cake. You know where I am with this. Lots of sweet notes. And you might argue a lot of cask notes, if I'm honest, as well, as opposed to spirit. Custard. Vanilla, it's biscuit, it's baked goods, bakery. So I'm so distracted by all of those notes that I'm suddenly just kind of searching the flavour map to look to see if I can check off anything else. But that's where it leads. It's really leading with that type of stuff. So lots of bourbon cask influence here. And sometimes on Tobermory's from the past, I've had, I know it was used to store cheese. It's nothing to do with that. But I sometimes got a bit of a lactic side, a little bit of a cheesiness from it. There's none on that. This is clean and fresh and sweet. Anyway, let's have a wee. Quite surprised how the nose is quite so active on that tonight. This is benefited, I think, from being in an open bottle for quite a while. Benefited in a strange way. That's quite a silky arrival. It's quite a silky pour, a silky whiskey. Nice body, nice and thick, decent weight, sweet on the palate too. The ABV, they're still there. It's still quite vibrant, so it brings a little bit of chili heat too. Maybe not chili, maybe pepper, but something like quite vibrant, a little bit of spice. Maybe a wee bit, maybe less pepper and chili, maybe kind of like a nice ginger or something. Let's go ginger. So much toffee caramel. Almost like a Werther's original, boiled toffee, sweets, butterscotch. So much vanilla, but good quality vanilla, not like artificial sweetener, not like artificial confectionery vanilla, just a good kind of vanilla pod type experience. Good weight, good body, long finish. This is just a wee bottle that I've forgotten about. Humble little clean whiskey. It's almost like tasting to me nothing like an island distillery, but like a nice sweet Highlander, or maybe even a Speyside tonight. I'm taken aback by that. It's really nice. There's a wee slumped teddy that we have on the top. That's the island of Mull and Cork. I'm gonna do something else. I'm going to pop that off to the side because I've got another bottle that's been forgotten about as well. And I'm going to put it to you as a theory as to why I think maybe it's a symptom of, or it's a product of. I can't decide which way around it is. But Leitchik is outselling Tobermory 2-1. But we've got Leitchik Rioja series as an on-age statement, inexpensive entry level to Leitchik, right? We've got the 10-year-old, which is fantastic stuff, and regularly priced competitively as well. The 18-year-old has only recently started to touch the £100 mark. It was the 18-year-old Leitchik was one of the best value 18-year-olds out there, especially for a peated 18-year-old, being sub £100. Great value. And then we have lots of other expressions. Very recently as well, on the 10-year-old vPub, I opened the Hebridean Moon, which is essentially a cask strength 10-year-old Leitchik, and very, very decent it was too. So there's lots and lots of Leitchiks out there. But in Tobermory, we have very little choice. We have the 12-year-old official bottling, reasonably priced, 40, 45, 50 pounds, that order. And then nothing. Occasional special releases, small batch, limited editions, all unified by one thing. They are expensive, often too expensive, and I don't understand why. Is this a deliberate thing? Is the Leitchik outselling it 2-1 because they don't really want to sell it Tobermory because it's going in other places, it's doing other things? Is it because they believe the value, it should be worth more? Is it that higher price point? Is it misplaced? Is it arbitrary pricing? Is it premium pricing? What is it? It's difficult to fathom. From an official bottling perspective, I don't think the choice is there. We don't see a kind of Sinclair series equivalent on the Tobermory side. We don't see additional age statements on the Tobermory side. In 2008, 2009, I was given one of the most interesting whiskies I've ever been gifted. My next door neighbour gifted me in a wooden box a Tobermory 15. It came in beautiful tissue paper, a sliding wooden box, everything. Back then, it wasn't that expensive. It was free to me. It was a gift from my next door neighbour. And it was my first ever experience of a really grimy, grungy, industrial, challenging whiskey. It was fantastic old school stuff. That was labelled Tobermory, but it's gone now. We don't have that anymore. And I want to ask, where is it? Why has it disappeared? So I'm going to pop a wee Tobermory here that I've bought for a previous vPub and forgotten about. This, you might remember, is a limited edition, cask matured limited edition. So this is 17 years old, fully matured in Oloroso casks. But this was quite pricey. This was north of £100 I paid for this. The ABV on it is excellent, 55.9% ABV. The colour is gorgeous. It's not nearly as dark as you would imagine for Oloroso, fully matured in Oloroso casks, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Oloroso could be in refill, first fill, vatting of both, whatever. But I would suggest to you to do it 17 years and come out of this colour. It's very likely to be the majority refill. I think I remember quite enjoying this. I've just stuck my nose in, got a big hit of that ABV, 55.9. It's definitely there on the nose. It's very Oloroso, especially on the back of that super sweet 12-year-old. This is all about spice and dark fudge sweetness, licorice, cloves, very spice forward. A wee bit of not sulfur, but edging towards that kind of sense of a savory sulfur type edge, like a not quite matchstick or firework. But that's general ballpark. Okay. Still a bit of sulfur on the palate, but much cleaner than you expected. It's quite interesting sipping this in contrast with a 12-year-old. They are completely different animals. A little bit of sourness on the finish there. This is a very balanced sherry cask expression here. There's still quite a lot of spirit here. I feel like it's still quite malty and it's not all about the cask. It's like it's quite colloquial. I don't want to dwell. We have something here called a serene malt loaf. It's a cake bread type thing, and it's very, very rich and malty, very dense. It's a wee bit reminiscent of that. So again, still quite sweet, despite the dryness, the slightly sulfur, slightly tannic side of the sherry cask coming into things. There's still quite a sweet expression, but it's clean and balanced. Is it worth 3 figures? Nope. I think that's what's put me off about this. I think it's objectively good whiskey, but it would be much better at 75 quid. Let's do a wee search just now. Let's see how much we would be paying for this if it's even still available for sale. Yeah, 120, 118, 130. It's just, I just feel like it's objectively good whiskey, but it's not that kind of good whiskey. For those of you that are in here that enjoy Dramface, if I was scoring this on Dramface, I think this would be, I think it would get a 6 out of 10. If it was 75 quid, you could argue the score could be, you could evangelize it about it a wee bit more and bump it up to a 7 potentially, but it's objectively good whiskey. 6 out of 10 on Dramface is good stuff. 7 is very good indeed. It's a 6 out of 10, and I think that's because you're paying £120, £125 for a 17-year-old fully matured and Oloroso whiskey, and you're getting exactly that, but you're not getting an exceptional example of the style. It's just good. Now, what if this had a wee bit of peat in it? What if I took some of that 17-year-old Tobermory, and then I'm not going to do that tonight, but I may do it at some point. What if I took some of that 17-year-old Tobermory and try what I did with that Jura there? What if I took it and added some 18-year-old Lechick to add a bit of peat? Maybe a little bit of 10-year-old Lechick to add a wee bit more peat. What would it do? It would change the age, of course. If I added the 18, I'd be fine. It would still be a 17-year-old. But if I added the 10-year-old, it would, in my glass, it would immediately be a 10-year-old. But we don't care. It's just for flavour. We don't care what age it is. It's in the glass. I think that would be fascinating. And it would still be a single malt whiskey. Tobermory and Lechick mixed together, it's still single malt. All the checks are there, single malt whiskey. Jimmy Legacy and Agua Vitae, it's not that kind of good whiskey is truly beautiful. It's not that kind of good whiskey. Okay. He's suggesting it's not that kind of good whiskey is truly beautiful. Yeah, sometimes I'm not sure what I'm saying half the time, if I'm making sense or not. I know that that's probably tongue-in-cheek, Jimmy, but thank you. I'm always just kind of riffing, and I don't have anything ever scripted. I'd hate to think what the vPub would be like if I scripted it. Probably be more accurate, right enough. Jimmy Jazz is saying, just opened that same Tobermory Agua Vitae. A bit too sherry forward for the summer. I will save for Christmas. Ooh. So you picked this up, Jimmy. I wonder if you got it locally in the US, and I wonder how much you paid for it out there. Justin Wan is saying, I don't remember what I paid for mine, but I don't think my Tobermory 12 was pricey. Tobermory 12 is usually okay. Simon Jones, it's usually about 40 to 45, I think, here in the UK, Justin. In Hong Kong, where you are, I'm not sure. Hey, what time is it for you, Justin? It's nice to have you in. Simon Jones is saying, it's finished in virgin oak, makes it very bourbony, less islandy. Oh, okay, I think he's probably talking about the 12-year-old there. And Gordon Burniston is saying, we had a CVH at Southside Club last night. Great tasting. Dram of the night was surprisingly the Lechick Rioja cask. Wow. Living Souls 99 and 1 made an appearance too, Agua Vitae. So the Living Souls 99 and 1 is famously a not quite teaspooned, but an accidental Lechick 18. Fantastic value, 55 quid, I think they were selling that for. There was no age statement on it, but we know it to be 18-year-old malt. Arnie Doodle Drama is saying, the wildest whiskey I have is a Chorlton Lechick 8-year-old, coastal to the max degree that gives crab meat notes on top of sun-baked beach pebbles. Utterly loving it, but it needs caution. Well, I have to say that there's a lot of kind of Ledchicks from the past that I remember through my exploration that would have been very much like that. I think Tobermory and Lechick in modern times for official bottlings have become much more kind of steady, and that's reassuring for a consistency and a repeat buy type perspective. But I suppose it means that maybe you don't get those kind of crazy, wonderful things that you've got there. But yours is only 8 years old, so I wonder what vintage that is, Arnie. You're my favourite riffer, Roy, says Jimmy. I don't say that easily. Jimmy, it's always wonderful to have you about. How is Angie these days? I wonder if you've got any plans of coming back over to Scotland. I know it's not going to be this year, buddy, but aye. We were thinking that maybe that was going to be an annual thing at one point. Lolander is saying, I heard that CVH made 7 out of 10 of the distillery production staff redundant a couple of weeks ago. Is that at Tobermory? That would be a shame. And we're hearing stories like this coming out quite regularly. And it's not a case of distilleries closing and shutting down and places going bankrupt. It's just people realizing that they're sitting on far, far too much stock. So the inevitability is that they push back on production, cut back on production. If you're cutting back, you don't need the same amount of people. That is indeed a shame. Daisy is saying, evening Roy, Aquavita and Barflies, back home just poured a Darkness Tobermory 20. Other option was a Jura 10. Easy choice for me. Daisy, fantastic. I think that would be my choice as well. How's the Tobermory going down? Jimmy is saying, I paid $180 Aquavita and not currently seeing the value, so just added some Leadchick 10. So he's done exactly what I was suggesting. It's a 10-year-old now, buddy, but it's still a single malt. Lolander is saying, a friend was told us when he visited the distillery last weekend. Ah, yeah, it's a shame. Look who's popped in. Whisky Jason saying hi from Germany. One of the hardest working guys in whisky. He's got his projects going on. He's got a whisky channel on YouTube in English, whisky channel on YouTube in German. I think you're still keeping up both, Jason. But it's wonderful to welcome you into the vPub, buddy. Hope you're keeping well, my friend. Cheers. It's a bit of an enigma for me, Tobermory. I am drawn to, and it's easy to fall in love with, the Leadchick side of things. And I don't know why that is. Is it my love of peat? Is it the love of smoke? Is it just the fact that the Tobermory spirit just seems to work so much better with that peat? Or is it the fact that maybe the Tobermory side of things, the unpeated stuff, leans a little bit more to the nondescript, needs virgin oak and Oloroso and things like that? I can never fathom it out. But I have to say, I struggle to find a Tobermory badged, Tobermory labelled liquid that I've really loved. My favourite Leadchick is down there. I spent a fortune at the distillery when I visited. It was just a wonderful, wonderful whiskey. I got through it so quickly. I'm holding on to just a small amount in the bottle. It's a 1990s vintage, 20 plus years old, distillery exclusive. But it's Leadchick, it's peated, but it's wonderful. I think I need, at some point in my journey, to uncover a Tobermory that I feel that way about. It hasn't happened yet. Everybody, Whisky Shop is in. Good to see you, Mikey. Saying evening, Roy. Hope you're well. Late to the show tonight. A lot of talk about Toravake on our blether tonight. Interested to hear what your favourite from them would be so far. Toravake, my favourite. My favourite is probably going to be the inaugural. However, just because of how surprised I was and how good it was, how super, super peated it was. However, the one to recommend, I would say, would be the Knocknamoynia, which is, I think, the sherry one, going from memory, just because it's just a bit more of a crowd pleaser. And I think it masked its age the best. What happened tonight? What was the favourite tonight, Mike? Peter Lay saying, how are you doing? Are you having a summer break? I am, Peter. And it's nice that you mentioned that. I should probably say that it's likely there are only 2 more vPubs left before the summer break. If I run 3, it'll be right up to the night before I leave, and it's probably too stressful. So I think there's going to be 2 more vPubs, which will mean that if we finish on a party session, hopefully Menno might be available for a quiz and things like that. We might work on a mood dependent. It might be a blind session. It might be a gamified kind of just getting people together for a bit of a party before we break up for summer, which will mean that next week's vPub is the best of 2025 so far. Yeah, so we are on the cusp of the summer break, Peter. Jeff Whisky is saying there is magic in Leadchick, Roy. No other reason. I think it's true. Per Calden Bay is here. I Aquavita and all. The briefest of checking-ins tonight. Heading to the pillow. Slant you all. Per, that's wonderful of you to drop in just to say hello. Per has a habit of having the vPub playing in the background as he's distilling. I hope we never put him off. Let us know how you got on with the quiz, Per, and thanks for dropping in to say hello to us tonight. That's Per from Smogen in Sweden. I held my just open Tobermory 12 up to imaginary mic and I poured it completely unconsciously. Thanks for that. maybe I'm holding it up to an imaginary mic. Hey, Jimmy, to pour mine. Fantastic. Coming in late today, says Pedro. Good to see Pedro from Brazil. He's saying, still haven't finished last week's quiz too. Everything's messed up. Good evening, Barflies and Aquavitae. Pedro, there's no such thing as late. And don't worry about things being messed up when it comes to the vPub. It's here to fit around your busy life. Joe Smith is saying, Aquavitae, I have a Thompson Brothers Torrevieck in my glass, 57.1, first fill bourbon, my fave so far. I had heard, I haven't seen that one. I think it may be gone already. I think that would be an interesting one to try, Joe. Good for you. Fantastic. 57.1% as well. Brilliant. Inverurie Whisky Shop is saying, Aquavitae, well, I agree on that. Knocknamoine, my favourite core, but Altglee and Cast Strength was also worth a mention. Oh, see, now you've got me in the Cast Strength. I've got them all. I've bought all of the Torrevieck releases so far. I haven't bought the most recent one, the one that's got the book attached to it, just because I've got so much Torrevieck on the go. So aye. Torrevieck has to be covered in a future island distillery vPub, because of course it's another island with 2 distilleries on it, isn't it, Skye? All right, let's move on. Let's switch islands. Let's go over to the Isle of Arran. There's a book here I want to mention to you before I go into the stuff about Arran here. We could dedicate an entire vPub easily to Arran. I'm going to apologise in advance if I clip things and cut it short the way I'm going to speak about Arran tonight, because we've got Lochranza in the north, and down in the southwest of the island we've got Lagg. But one of the best books I can recommend to you if you want to understand the stories behind Arran, and I think this is published in collaboration with the distillery, so this isn't a completely independently written book. It matters not. It's more of a historical thing. And this is called the Arran Malt, an island whiskey renaissance, written by Neil Wilson. This is, I think it's generally available. I think you can buy this at the distillery, if I'm honest. It's quite an easy read. There's lots and lots of information on, it's not focused on Lagg. This focuses fully on Lochranza. Lagg was not a fully realised project when this book came about. But what this does focus on is a concept of what was not known as the Arran malt, but the Arran water. And Arran water was, back in the days where everyone was after Glenlivet, that was the thing to have in the 19th century. And it didn't need to be from the Glenlivet. It didn't need to be from that Glenlivet distillery, but it was from that region. Okay, this is it really does go back to the days of the Highland line and taxation and smugglers and all of that stuff. The real stuff, if you were going to get your hands on high quality Scotch whisky, if you were connected and you could afford it, you wanted Glenlivet. The other thing, if you knew the other thing that was seen to be the pinnacle of Scotch whisky was Arran water. And there was a small distillery near Lagg in a place called Lamlash that was just for a few years was licensed to produce on Arran. But there was a lot of conflict there, a lot of problems, because Arran was completely run from a whiskey perspective by smugglers, by illicit distillers. And specific to the Isle of Arran, this was not seen as a criminal pursuit. This was almost seen as kind of a romantic role, as something that you did because you were connected. It was something to almost aspire to. And the reputation that malt, that illicitly made malt, had from the Isle of Arran was way above the majority of its contemporaries of the time. Arran water became so in demand that it was inevitable, surely an inevitability, that at some point somebody was going to open a legitimate distillery on Arran. Well, it took until 1995 for that to happen. An ex-Chivas Regal employee called Hal Curry, eventually in his retirement, believe it or not, after he was retired, finally managed to put together a program in order to build a distillery on the north of Arran at Lochranza. It was fits and starts at the beginning. It wasn't an easy beginning. Remember, this was 1995. New distilleries was not a thing. Single malt was on the up, but it wasn't anything like it is today, or in the 2000s or the 2010s. It was early days. They were way ahead of the curve. And it was difficult to begin with, very difficult. But they managed it. Today, as I sit in front of you today, it's theoretically possible for Lochranza Distillery to release a 30-year-old malt whiskey. Quite an incredible story. So if we focus on Lochranza, at one point in time, it was the most visited Scotch malt distillery in Scotland. If we focus on that distillery and just consider how impactful that's been in the last 15 to 20 years, it's gone from being this raw, difficult to get your head round, inconsistent, non-age statement, then non-age statement, and it's lost all of that. It's become one of the most consistent distilleries, certainly when we talk about the core range 10-year-old. Quite a transformation. And it's almost all-conquering, because that 10-year-old, it was a featured on the 10-year-old vPub last week. A lot of you were annoyed and surprised that I didn't put it higher up in my top 10 personal picks list. But it was in there. It made it in the top 10, because this is like the perfect recipe. Age statement, fully natural, 46% ABV, no colour. They've even got this really traditional, simple, straightforward, very attractive label. They've got some braille on here as well. It's perfect. It's difficult to fault this. And then the price is often sub £40. It's £45 retail, about that kind of order, that type of price. But you can get it a wee bit cheaper. So the value is perfect as well. And when you gift that to someone in this pretty attractive bottle with this nice cork, with the embellishment on the side, with the etching on the side and the printing on the top, and it's just everything about it is just perfect. And then the malt itself, I often say it, is such a crowd pleaser. For me, it's a wee bit on the sweet side. It's a wee bit on the lots and lots of first fill bourbon, lots of really, really super active first fill bourbon. It's very sweet. I prefer the more kind of balanced. This is the 14-year-old I love. And I've got this branding up there, the previous branding of the 10-year-old, which is the kind of green label. I've got that up there as well, which I slightly prefer over the new 10-year-old. It's not to knock anything about the 10-year-old. But what I'm actually going to pour tonight, I was going to pour this. This is one of the Remnant Renegade. They've got a signature series out. I think they're on number 2 right now. I bought number 1. I've never opened it. This looked like a concoction to me. Sherry hogshead, sherry bourbon barrels, all mixed together from Lochranza's warehouse number 5. Natural filler, no added colour, 46% ABV. This was one of the ones that comes in a kind of cloth sack. It's unopened. I haven't opened it yet. Don't know if I'm in the mood for that tonight. But what I may pour a wee glass of, just because I'm hanging out with all of you, you can see how much I've enjoyed this one. And this is Arran's 25-year-old. I managed to, people don't buy me things for my birthday anymore, whiskey things for my birthday anymore, because I've got so much. So they'll occasionally give me some money. And when we took a trip to Arran in 2023, I think it was, from memory, could be 2022, I'm not sure. This was available and I had money from gift money to me, and I treated myself to this. So I've managed to keep it going for a couple of years now. I've shared it quite widely. It was a beautiful, beautiful whiskey. When it first came out, it was already a bit pricey, and it's got more pricey since. I think you're close to £400 for this now. I didn't pay that. I paid under 300 for this, but still a lot of money. And I tend to be very, very careful with it. But I have very few of these vintage, these age-dated whiskies. I tend to be focused on buying whiskies that is much more relatable to everyone wherever you are in the world. I tend to buy whiskey based on the content, based on the vPub, based on what I do. So it's really nice to have the occasional bottle like this where you can go, oh, that's right, I've got an Arran 25. And I remember the first time I tried this, it was back when it was first launched, which I think was 2020. I think Andy Bell was on, and they had just launched the 25-year-old, and I managed to get a sample of it. And I knew it to be something lovely. So it was Easy for me to make the purchase when I was over there a few years back. Still remarkably orchard fresh fruit forward, but you just get this thing something that just comes from aged whiskey, from whiskey that's been left for a wee bit longer. It's poise and decadence and a fustiness and a dampness and a dunnageness and a tropicality, a sweet, ripe fruit. Some sweet citrus too. Arran has always had this orangey side for me. Almost sometimes like orange cordial. Kiora, for those of you who remember such a thing. It's quiet in here. We've got some nice, there's even a peppermint there. Some nice dunnage, some nice sackcloth, rope type canvas, tent canvas type notes. An incredible treat. I wish I could share it with you all. Cheers. The alcohol is inside the whiskey. Everything is integrated. Nothing is in an extreme, but there's complexity and detail. We've got this nice strawberry laces licorice thing happening right at the end there. A little bit of bitter sour, a little bit of acidity, a little bit of, it's just detail, enough detail. I would suggest to you that Arran, I know that they didn't ever have a lot of stocks from the 1990s. It's going to take them a while, but I think that they will be able to build over time and just get better and better and better at doing this. Obviously, it's going to be tough for us to be able to afford stuff of this age, but every now and again, I hope we all have the ability to put a treat bottle on the shelf, something that can last us, something that we can pour for the treat moments. Excellent stuff. I buy you whiskey for your birthday every year. Come on over and pick it up. Be careful what you wish for, Jimmy Legg. Paint Spot is saying, hi Roy, did you try the 7-year-old Arran from Good Spirits? It is an absolute cracker, if a tad expensive. I think it was £75. Would that be right? Paint Spot? Yes, I have picked up a bottle of it. It's through there. It could have been one for the offing tonight. Maybe I should have had poured that one. But I've got something else for you tonight, Paint Spot. Is that the first time I've welcomed you in? I think Paint Spot is a new name to me. It's nice to have you here. Gordon J. and Aquaviti poured the last sample at the Arran Calvados single cask from 2003. Young, but a great dram. Just a hint of apples that suits the citrus flavour. Great. Looks like another new name for me, Gordon J. That's amazing that you've been able to hold one of the very, very first playful releases way back in 2003 from Arran. The oldest that could be would be 7 or 8 years old back then, right? I have no idea. I don't even recognise. I can't even picture the bottle that it is. Wonderful piece of history, I suppose, there. Let's go with a similar age to what you've got there, Gordon J. Look what I found. This is one of the bottles that I did pick up for this vPub this week. Much in the same vein as the Jura. And if we go to Arran, I'm going to try and connect with Arran, okay? So the 10-year-old, I've already mentioned that to my palate, the 10-year-old tends to be a little bit sweet, very, very bourbon cask forward. And when I say bourbon cask, it's almost verging on kind of, not quite virgin oak, but very, very rich toffee, caramel, apple, sweet apple bourbon cask. But here we've got something here that I hope can be a wee bit more kind of revealing. It's at 46% ABV, a limited edition single cask from Douglas Laing's Provenance edition. and it's a December 2014 vintage, bottled in December 2022, charged from 1 refill barrel. So we've got a 200-litre American refill barrel, 8 years old, and like the Jura, look how pale this is. So you can see why I've sought this out. Because this is the type of stuff that Arran doesn't release. Arran is not going to release something as raw as I suspect this is likely to be. This is going to give us an idea of what Arran actually is like. I've got 2 more clean glasses left. One for this and one for the last distillery that we're going to share tonight. Oh, almost on theme. We've got a Tobermory glass as well. This is a Tobermory electric glass that's going to have some of this Arran in it. The wonderful glug that comes from a tall round bottle. So you can see why I've bought this. It was similar price to that Jura 7-year-old. It was 40 to 45 pounds, I think. I can't remember. It gives us the ability to just, if there was a 10-year-old version of this, I would have probably bought the 10-year-old version, but 8 was close enough. 46% ABV. So this has obviously been reduced. Douglas Sling has brought the ABV down to 46 for bottling strength. Do you know what still has that kind of sweet orange side? Still apple orchard, that type of thing. Lots of fruit. It's a very fruity style whiskey. It's a famous story that Hal Curry, because he worked at Chivas Brothers, when he built Arran, he had this idea of making a Speyside style malt. But and it's true. I think that is very, very close. I think a lot of people would know this and be quite happy to believe it's from Speyside. It's still quite an orangey thing for me. I'm going to be following a 25-year-old Arran with an 8-year-old Arran. Same ABV. I think they reduced to 25 down to 46. They did. But 17 years difference in age. This doesn't, I mean, it's been reduced. It's at 46. There's not a lot of youth. It doesn't express. The 7-year-old Jura was very youthful, very raw. This is not like that. This is a much better behaved whiskey. Let's have a wee taste. Oh. For any of you that remember the 10-year-old Arran of old, the slightly lighter, more kind of champagne coloured, older branding. I've got a bottle up there, but it's out of reach. I would have to get out my seat to go and get it. The branding that looks like this, but it's the green version of it. It's much, much more similar to that. Much more similar to that. There aren't any rough edges to this. It's younger, of course it's younger. But that's just lovely, fruity, honest, straight down the line whiskey. I could take a bottle of this on holiday and just devour it. Lots of orchard fruit, sweet citrus, a lovely, clean, I'd argue a creamy malt. Lots of nice cereal, like almost going on for a shortbread biscuit sweetness. A biscuity malt. A green element too, maybe not grassy green, but like if you're going to go into the orchard fruit things, you're thinking about more kind of green fruits, gooseberries, kiwi, that type of flavor. right up my street. If I was tasting this, I would think this was 10, 12 years plus. This is a very good cask, despite being a refill cask. It's second fill at the most. Lots of nice sweetness still here. Lots of balance. And that's me sipping it on the back of a 25-year-old. That's a great wee find. It's a great wee bottle to find for 40 quid, 45 quid, whatever I paid for that. Nice find. And it really takes you to the core. We talk about distillery characters. It's not really a thing anymore. You know, Arran could set up a new distillery over there on Lochranza, and they could just build a distillery to make any style that they wanted. You know, they're not using local barley. They did make peated. They've stopped making peated malt now. We'll get to that. They could use anything that they wanted because it's all being brought in, and then it's being shipped off the island. They're just located there. They can make anything they want. And that's true of almost every distillery that exists in Scotland now. It's possible for them to make whatever they want to make. So distillery character is still an interesting thing, but it's not really tied to regions. This, whatever they're making, whatever style it is, this is just a good, clean, no frills, honest example. I don't know if I could excite people that come into whiskey new with a bottle like this, but for me and people like me, this is a nice thing. This is a nice thing to sit with. Jeff Whiskey's bought me a dram. Popped a birth year, 1992 Speyside, to celebrate being able to watch the first full vPub in ages. Cheers, Roy. I know what that's about, buddy. That's about your growing family, your new family, buddy. Listen, it's wonderful to have you in here. There's no need for you to buy me drams, buddy, but it's very much appreciated, my friend. It's nice to have you in here. And if you're popping something from 1992, well, you're a show off in two ways: that you have a 1992 and that you are that vintage and you're still youthful. Fantastic, Jeff. Pedro, celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 26 months and saying young Arran shows us how amazing the distillery is. I think especially today, it's amazing. And Jimmy Legg has bought me a generous dram again, saying I'd love a regulation that requires every distillery to produce a 12-year-old whiskey at 50% from only second fill bourbon. Jimmy wants being a purist legislated. Fantastic, Jimmy. I could get on board with that, buddy. It's never going to happen, but I could get on board with that. Cheers, fella. Where's Roy? Roy will be here in Norway. He's saying to Jeff Whiskey that ship has sailed for him. And Frank is saying to him that he's lucky you're able to afford a birthday bottle. Not feasible for me. That's what we're all saying, that Jeff's born of a vintage where it's still relatively achievable for him to have a birth year vintage. Okay, let's move on to our last distillery. Listen, that's a bit of a find. I'm quite pleased with that wee bottle. I wasn't holding out much for this. I wasn't excited about this. I just thought it would be a good way to connect with. But I just think it's a nice rock solid bottle. Let's move on to the last distillery. Let's talk about that concept of, firstly, we talk about the illicit distilling. You know, it's inevitable that if they're going to open a second distillery, they're going to go down to kind of the bedrock, the seat of illicit distilling on Arran. They're going to go down to the southwest, Lagg, Lamlash, that area. And that's what they did. We've opened a fantastic distillery. I encourage you, if you go to Arran, visit both by all means, but you have to visit Lagg. The vista, the view across the endless ocean, the infinite ocean there. You can see down to Ailsa Craig, you can see back to the mainland, you can see, it's a fantastic place to go and visit. They do food, they've got a great visitor centre, everything. On the success of Lochranza, Isle of Arran distillers were able to build another new distillery. They were able to talk about illicit distilling and all of that stuff. But what they actually built was, much in the same way they arrived on Arran and built a Speyside distillery, they decided this time around, and unfortunately Hal Curry has passed by this time, but they decide they're going to make a peated malt, and they're going to make the exact opposite of what they're making. That elegant, clean, fruity style of malt from Lochranza, they're going to make a big bruiser of a whiskey in Lagg. We know this was the intention, not just because of the end product, but because of when you visit that distillery, you see the layout, you see the production, and you see those stills. Big, fat, onion-shaped stills. If you look at Lagg's bottle, and you look at the design of that bottle, it looks like thick, oily whiskey clinging to the bottle, doesn't it? So you're already thinking about that. It's already in your mind. What have I got here? This is the inaugural release batch 2. So this is the sherry one. This is down quite a level. Look at this inaugural batch 1, which is the bourbon one. Look at that. Levels betray me. I'm enjoying this more. No, that's not true. I bought a second bottle of this. This was 3-year-old whiskey, and I absolutely loved it. These are inaugural releases. These are not available today. But the sherry and bourbon releases that are available today are the Tobermory, which is here, and you can see I'm getting through this. Look how green this whiskey is. This is literally green whiskey. It's not just to do with the glass, it's to do with the colour of that whiskey. There are green highlights in this. It's amazing stuff. And here's the Coricravi, which is more of a kind of sherry cask theme, but instead of matured in sherry cask, this has got a sherry cask finish. These are the official releases. The Coricravi, I have to suggest to you that I'm very familiar with this whiskey. I think this is my second bottle of the Coricravi. It's an official release. And there's a good chance that this is my first bottle of the Tobermory. I think when I'm reaching for a Lagg, it would have been the inaugural I was reaching for. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to pour the purest version of Lagg that you can buy today. This is the Tobermory edition. It's about £50. The ABV is great, exactly what we want to see. 46% ABV, non-chill filtered, natural colour. No age statement on it, but here's the crazy thing. This whiskey can be no older than 5 years old because of when I bought this. If you were to buy it today, it could be no older than 6 years old. Lagg started distilling in 2019. Sometimes I'm peat blind. Sometimes I don't pick up peat. I could have gone for a Hydrometer. This is a peated whiskey made at Lochranza. They've stopped making it now because they're making all their peat at Lagg, but this is still going to be available for a long time, this peated brand from Lochranza. Hydrometer is still going to be sold, I imagine. I think you can still buy it out there. That's the sherry cask Fingles cut version. But this is huge peat. This is really intense, really smoke peat forward. And there's nothing to mask or hide it or distract. This is bourbon cask in the Tobermory. It's super salty and smoky. Sometimes I can get lost trying to describe what type of peat that it is. Ardbeg is sooty for me. Ardmore can be earthy and farmy, warm peat. For me, this is a kind of oily and floral peat. It's like an aromatic, you're burning heather or something, or some botanicals are being burned here. That's the type of smoke that it is. But the big thing is the immediate idea that this might actually possess some significant heft and body, and how that comes across on the nose is weird. but it does. It's quite a robust, bold, shouty thing. Cheers, everyone. Somebody came up to me in the Glasgow Whisky Festival, and I think it was 2 years ago. It wasn't last year, it was 2 years ago. So it might have been the inaugural. It might not have been the Kilmorey I was speaking about, but they came up and they said, I'm really surprised how much you enjoy that Lagg. I tried it and I just couldn't enjoy it at all. They said that it was like New Make Spirit and it was really raw and rough and it was awful, and they feel like it's one of the worst bottles that they've ever had. And it's heartbreaking, right? Because somebody's heard you speaking positively about something and they've gone out and they've spent their money on a bottle being excited, and then they've got something on the shelf that they really don't enjoy. So firstly, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your feedback. We know each other. We know who it is. And it's okay to have those discussions in whiskey. That's part of what whiskey and what it's all about. But I was a wee bit crestfallen because it's not just about the fact that he doesn't enjoy a whiskey. He doesn't enjoy a whiskey that I really enjoy and I encouraged him to enjoy. But I came home and I went back to Lagg and I sat and I sipped it. And I'm convinced that one day he's going to pick up a glass of that and say, oh, do you know what? I've got this. I misunderstood this at first approach. And I think sometimes it's because of how excited I get about things. I sometimes oversell the thing, and it's not intentional. I'm just riffing. I'm just sharing my enthusiasm. And I think that that's potentially what's happened here. But I'm sipping this again tonight. And this is the Kilmorey. This is the bog standard 3-year-old, potentially 4-year-old, maybe 5, unlikely to be much more older than that. And it's just like the Torrevik, like Arran, like so many other new distilleries, PT new distilleries, that are able to just make such fantastic malt whiskey at such a young age. Yes, there's a new make vibe, but there's the weight, there's a mouth coating, there's the oiliness. Wee bit of ash on the finish there. Yellow citrus, lemon zest, lemon, specifically the zest, the skin, the pith. Clean white smoke. A green thing like maybe tomato vines, that type of vibe. Very malt forward, very new make forward, very spirit forward. I think Lagg, if it ever follows in the footsteps of its sister distillery up at Lochranza and makes it to a point where it's bringing out 15, 18, 20-year-old whiskey, I hope not only am I still here, still enjoying whiskey, still doing this thing, I hope I'm able to participate in that. Because I predict, like Torrevik, like Arran, like so many other distilleries out there, the new distilleries, I predict the quality of the aged product will be insanely good. That I feel confident of. And I base it on nothing other than my experience of sipping young legacy whiskies. 5-year-old Ardbegs, for example, that type of thing, and sipping 5-year-old new distillery products. It's quite an achievement from a lot of them. Tim, Dramface Whisky is saying, Machrie Moor Cask Strength Batch 4 was fantastic for me. Vegetal green peat with virtually no smoke or ash. Right up my alley. So that's the Machrie Moor Cask Strength Batch 4. That would have been peated Lochranza malt. Pedro is saying, leaving now for a tasting. Theme, whiskies from the islands. See you next week, Aquaviti and Barflies. What a coincidence that is, Pedro. Thank you so much for dropping in. You've stayed here quite a bit longer than I expected, buddy. And Anthony Lambert is saying, Aquaviti, I grew up with Atlantic storms on the West Wales coast. I now live in northern Germany where it gets very cold in winter, and I love strong peat and sherry. I love deep, strong, warming drams. It's quite a seasonal thing for me, Anthony. I tend to be drinking this type of thing more in the winter. And the first thing that popped into my head with that Provenance 8-year-old Arran is this is something I want to take on holiday with me, right? But this year I've been enjoying my smoky whiskies quite a lot, really quite a lot. So yeah, growing up in the West Coast and now living in northern Germany where it gets cold in winter, loving strong peat and sherry. Strong peat and sherry works very well together. I am super excited about the future of the new distilleries. And I'm also hopeful that despite the kind of lull that we find ourselves in whiskey right now, and I'm not just talking about the summer lull that we've just touched upon, I'm talking about the kind of, there are a lot of people that got into whiskey in the last 5 years that have scratched the itch and left. And I'm speaking about the enthusiast side of things right now. I'm not talking about the wider kind of global challenges with tariffs and taxes and duties and inflation and earnings not matching inflation and all of the global economic things that the wider drinks industry is seeing. I'm just focusing on us, the whiskey enthusiast type of things. I think we're back in 2016, 2017 right now in terms of the scale of the community and the people that are buying the whiskey right now. But unfortunately, the market to support that is still poised and set up pointing towards the kind of hyper overheated vibes that there were going on in whiskey from, let's say, late 2019, certainly when COVID kicks in into about 2023. That's what the market is pointing towards. So we're seeing a lot of problems right now, a lot of overstocks, oversupply, all of that type of thing. But we have still living in an age that has seen island distilleries, just to look at this small section, go from 5, just as the start of this century, 5 island distilleries, to quadruple that number today. And we're not talking about Islay, we're not touching Islay there. And what we need to remember is scale. All of these distilleries are tiny in comparison to the legacy distilleries. There is a real chance for them to survive. If we demand integrity, quality, fair pricing, and they deliver those things, they have a chance to survive. They need to leverage more than just tourist traffic. You can charge a tourist £120, £150 for a souvenir distillery handfill. They're going to leave thinking that you've got a premium product that they can never participate in again. But if you charge them £75, £80 for your distillery handfill, and you have your core release there at the same price that they can buy it locally, and you don't overcharge them at the distillery, they leave with a perception that they've a brand that they can connect with longer term. I think that we need to, all of us, remember the value of whiskey, remember the cost of whiskey, remember the appropriate positioning of whiskey. There's far too much greed crept in recent years. I hope that a lot of these new distilleries that I'm talking about, a lot of these new island distilleries that I'm talking about, is not a product of or an opportunistic event caused by that greed. When I taste these whiskies from Lagg, from Torvik, from all of these new distilleries, I taste quality, I taste potential, and I really, really look forward to tasting how they can develop in the years ahead. This 25-year-old from Arran that I sip tonight is gorgeous whiskey. But this was made in the mid-90s. And this was not made with a view to making the type of quality that they're making today. This was made with a very different outlook, a very different idea. This was made with a view to trading stocks and supplying bulk whiskey into the industry. The fact that this can taste good at 25 years old is fortunate. The whiskies that are being made today that we might be able to taste in 10 and 15, 20 and 25 years, I put it to you that the quality is considerably higher. I don't know if you agree. That's my feeling. Graham Fraser is here. Good to see you, Graham. The Jura at the Glasgow Whisky Club was a bit of a revelation, wasn't it, Roy? I have to say, I never picked it out as a Jura. It wasn't my favourite of the night, but I quite enjoyed it. I didn't dislike it, Graham. I think that's probably the best thing. I don't know how you felt about it, buddy. David is saying, anyone who loves peat can pass on that Lagg. It has the perfect profile for peat lovers. Anyone that loves peat can't pass on that Lagg. David is saying, it has the perfect profile for peat lovers. For me, that green note is close to the bitter olive bite of raw olive oil. Come on, is that what I was after? Love it. I love it. I think you're closer than where I was going with the tomato vine thing, David. Bitter olive oil. I'm Portuguese, though. Lol, he's saying. Spot on, David. Fantastic. And Doodle the Drama is saying, if you want a festive whiskey, I recommend a single cask nation, 9-year-old sherried Lochranza Christmas punch. It's still June, isn't it, Arnie? Come back to the vPub in December and remind us all of your tip, buddy. I grew up with Atlantic Storms. I picked it up, Anthony. Sorry, my friend. I need to pick up Danny's chat that's just come in. He's bought me a dram to say, for a cheap parasol brolly, when you do your next recycled review, you're predicting rain when I do it. I don't know if I'd be able to go out into the rain and film, but I might give it a wee try. Danny, thank you very much for your generous dram as always, my friend. Cheers. And Falsgraph is saying, in May, my first ever distillery visit was Tobermory. The unconventional version of Handful for €75 is worth it, and it has enhanced my respect for a brand like Tobermory. Spot on. That's because they treated you fairly. I am sick of the distilleries that you walk in, you've made the pilgrimage. Some of these distilleries are far-flung and remote. You've made the pilgrimage, you've got there, you want something that you can only get there, and they abuse you by charging you sometimes twice what you should be charged for. Some of the distilleries I'm talking about are very close to home as well. You should, it costs more to do. No, you should be subsidizing that. Why all this short-termist? I'm not going to get in on a rant, but it's all this short-termist greed that it's not just in whiskey, it creeps into everything. We need to remember just some moral. Thomas Elmer is saying, I hope what you say comes true, but wouldn't that hold true now for some of the older distilleries, Laphroaig and Old Pulteney? Tom, it's nice to have you in, buddy. It's always brilliant to welcome you here. I'll say it again, that Laphroaig, Old Pulteney, those distilleries that you mentioned, they've been so focused on yields and efficiencies and all of that. And I'm not suggesting that new distilleries are not focused on that. They very much are. But they have been set up for different purposes at much smaller scale to sell single malt for single malt's sake. There are very few new distilleries that we have today, like the original Arran in 95. Inchdairney, there are some out there, Dalmonic, things like that. They've been set up for the traditional whiskey model of bulk sales and trading casks and things like that. But generally speaking, most of these new brands in single malt that we have today, they have to go best foot forward on flavour and quality. Anthony Lambert is saying, in 25 years from now, I hope I'll still be sipping a dram at 85 and watching a young Roy on the vPub. Anthony, I'll drink to that, my friend. That would be brilliant. Anth is in. Good to see you again. Anthony saying, I just joined a late entry. Arran 18 is my island favourite. It's a stunner. Jura 16, natural colour, non-chill filtered, was great as well. Glad that you've picked up on that perspectives. It's nice to have some some backup and other people that's come in and enjoyed it. Ralphie has also reviewed the Jura perspectives. Justin Rans bought me a drum from Hong Kong. He's saying, got to pull the parachute again right before the quiz. Good chat with Jimmy Legg and Pete Head, and please let me know if you drop by Daniel Key. Look, Daniel Key is out in Hong Kong at the minute. It'd be amazing if the two of you were able to meet up. Rant mode activated, absolutely, Lowlander. Very close. £130 for a 9-year-old handful at Talisker today, says Callum. Callum Renton, good to see you. And Callum, how you keep, my friend? Good to see you, buddy. He's saying £130 for a 9-year-old handful at Talisker. That's exactly the type of cynicism I find nauseating. Daniel Key is saying, just did Talisker yesterday. Prices can be discussed, but the liquid offered on the tour were absolute bangers. Well, it's nice that you came away with something. So, Daniel, you're here. You're in Scotland. You're maybe planning a trip to Hong Kong. But that price for the handful is no use. Somebody mentioned the quiz. We do have a quiz at the end tonight, of course. I don't know what I've managed to do tonight. I think there's a good chance I've managed to come up with some kind of balance. It's not going to be on theme. It's not going to be all about island whiskies and that type of thing. But there might have been things mentioned tonight that will help you navigate this quiz at the end tonight. Let's pull it in here. It just needs a wee minute or two to process. And while that's doing that, I can encourage you to stay, please, because I know we always see it. I mean, where are we at? We're at just 226 right now. That's going to drop below 200, I suspect, because we're at the quiz at the end. But I put it to you that the fun of the quiz at the end is that there's no pressure. How much have you learned over your whiskey journey over the few years? How much have you picked up by osmosis? Even for things that you haven't, maybe you can read between the lines in the questioning. Maybe you can lean on your peers in the live chat if you're in here live. There's nothing much more fun than just seeing, oh my goodness, I've actually learned quite a bit, especially in this super knowledgeable community that we have here. Ben Whiskey with Molly saying, picked up a Hinch yesterday. He's obviously in Northern Ireland right now. It's the first release with their own liquid. Very pleasant, aquavitae. Good stuff to hear. I think Hinch are one of these distilleries that's kind of going integrity forward, right? Then we've got Rick Johnson saying, I got a 10 last week. I'm afraid to play this week. Come on, go for consecutive 10s. Be optimistic. Always fun. Falscraft is saying that quiz. Fantastic to have you here, Klaus. And Jimmy Legg is saying, good luck getting Frank and I to leave before you, Roy. My super supportive, bizarrely gentlemanly elders. It's wonderful to have you here. Good stuff. Remember, it's only for fun. It's peak curiosity, all of those things. Multiple choice. Pass mark is 5. Good luck, everyone. I think there's a good chance that we'll have, I'm going to predict 1 or 2 10 out of 10s tonight, but not lots. I never know how to gauge these things, though. Here we go, everyone. Good luck. Question 1. Which of these ARDs have their condensers mounted externally? Geeky question to kick things off with right at the start of things. So we're condensing the spirit here, but I want to ask you which of these ARDs have these condensers mounted externally. Is it A, Ardbeg, B, Ardnaho, or C, Ardnamurchan? Here we go. Here goes nothing, says Ted Brooks and Andrew Hamaker. Good to see you, Ted. Good to see you, Andrew. Glenn FC is in, Klaus. Good to see you, Glenn. Playing along at the end. Island Hopper Stuart is still here. Good to have you, Stuart. Michael C is here as well. Michael, I feel like I might have welcomed you before. If I haven't, welcome in tonight. One Glassman Warner from Florida is here. Brilliant stuff. Donner Pass Whiskey Tim from the Donner Pass from away out west is still here. Good to see Tim. Jero Borkham. Jero, you're a barfly, but I think it's the first time I've welcomed you. That might be Gero Borkham. Wonderful to have you in. Lassie Hort Otsman is here. Glenn B is here. Good to see you, Glenn. Daniel Key is playing along. Kyle Taylor. Pete Head is still in at the end. Of course he is. Big Ed is here. Daisy Vleeland. Sticks191 looks like a new name. Sticks, good to have you in playing a quiz at the end. Ted Brooks is saying B. Where's Roy? Roy Hydrometer in Norway. Roy, you're saying B as well. Discordia is in. Good to see you, Discordia. Graham Fraser, of course, was playing at the end. Hellswood is still here. By the way, can we mention that this is the first vPub that Helen is, not the first vPub that she's in Campbelltown, but the first vPub that she's in Campbelltown with her internet connected, I believe. I hope it's connected at least. Dave the Brave is here. Good to see you, Dave. Try and catch as many names as I can. Chuck is playing it right at the end. He's saying Overland Drams. Get your answer in, Chuck, and you can play along the quiz at the end. A, B, or C. Which of these is externally mounted? Doodle Dram is saying externally. I read horizontally, and I've only had one dram tonight. No, it's externally. I can tell you that Ardnamurchan has externally mounted condensers, but so does Ardnahoe. Ardbeg has shell and tube condensers inside. Ardnahoe has worm tub condensers outside. Ardnamurchan has shell and tube condensers mounted outside. The banana skin was there. It wasn't a freebie this week, so there was wasn't giving you 3 for 3. It was one banana skin. There was Ardbeg. So if you answered B or C, you're in good shape. Let's move into question 2. Bruichladdich released a series of whiskies on the theme of WMD. Which stood for what? What did their WMD acronym stand for from Bruichladdich? Obviously, it's a play on weapons of mass destruction, of course. But in the Bruichladdich speak, was it A, whiskey of mass distinction, B, water of mass destruction, or C, weapon of mass discernment? What did the WMD from Bruichladdich stand for? Whiskey of mass distinction, water of mass destruction, weapon of mass discernment. Really, really, really enjoying that Lagg. I'm going to go back into that wee. In fact, I can't go into the Arran that I poured the 8-year-old because it's polished off. It always tells a tale what you're enjoying. I've got a wee sip left of my 25-year-old here. I've obviously got that wee concoction I made here earlier on of the Juras. Let's see how that's sipping after these whiskies I've had. It's like a perfect mix of the two, I would say now. I still think I've improved it. I really do. Gero is going with the crowd. Good philosophy to have. He's answering A. Falscraft is saying, wasn't that because the webcams were used in classes for chemical weapons or something? Yeah, there's a lot of theories on that. First of it was the Yellow Submarine, of course, which was WMD 2-3 release, I don't remember. Then they also had the time when they tried to mash the heritage grain, the beer barley, for the first time, and it basically smashed the rakes. So it was another way of kind of playing on the destruction thing. So they had a few different WMD releases, I think, but it was based on, as the majority of you got, being knowledgeable whiskey folks, A, whiskey of mass distinction. Tongue-in-cheek, good fun at the time. That was what the WMD releases were about. The latest WMD Yellow Submarine was a 25-year-old. I seem to remember it being quite pricey at the time, but maybe 10 years ago now. Question 3. What detail does Glenglassaugh, Scapa, and Lagg all feature on their new bottles? What do they have in common? Do they feature A, all of them feature a water swirl, B, all of them feature a sailboat, or C, all of them feature a sea mammal? Anthony Lambert is celebrating 2 out of 2, saying rolling, rolling, rolling. There's a new name, Cotulf. Cotulf Ashby. He's saying cheers, Roy. That looks like the first time I've welcomed you in, my friend. Good to have you, Cotulf. I hope I'm pronouncing your name well. Paul Murray is here. Good to see you, Paul. It's been a wee while. I feel like it's a familiar name, though. It's only downhill from here, lads, he's saying. Jimmy Legg is saying, I'm a sea mammal. soon as you step in the sea, that'd be absolutely true. And Paul is saying, I'm guessing A, less confident though this time. Daisy is saying A, sorry. Sticks191 is saying A along with Tom Elmer. Gero is going for B. Anthony Lambert is saying, have a Lagg bottle sat in front of me, so A. That would be the easy way to do it. If you didn't see a sea mammal or a sailboat, but you did see a water bottle, I can tell you that absolutely the majority of you are spot on. All of them have a bottle that acknowledges the kind of swirling liquid, either because it's coastal whiskey or perhaps like Lagg, despite being coastal as well, but it's kind of trying to convey this oiliness thing. But they all have this kind of water swirl on it. A, says Rick Johnson, but I think the swirl on the Lagg is for the mountains on the island, I believe. I think that's probably true, Rick. But it's certainly, for me, it kind of just looks like a very oily coating on the glass. Question 4. Which of the following distilleries were significantly affected when Port Ellen Maltings ceased to supply non-Diageo distilleries in 2022? Port Ellen Maltings makes obviously a huge amount of peated malt, but back in 2022, Diageo decided to pull up the drawbridge and not supply that malt to anyone outside their own portfolio after years of doing so. I think it was managed. I think there was some notice and things like that put in place. It'd be interesting to see if they go back on that now that things have changed since 2022. However, I am asking you, which of these following distilleries were significantly affected by that decision? A, Ardnamurchan. B, Tobermory. C, Kilchoman. Jimmy's on a 3 for 3, as is Daniel Key, Joe Smith, Andrew Hamaker, Jake Lockhart. Good to have you in, Jake. Doodle Dram. Arnie's on a 1 out of 3. Oh dear. A couple of banana skins for Arnie. Tommy Elmer on a 3. Jimmy Jazz for a 3. Rick Johnson 3. Mike Molasses. Gero's on 2. Lachlan Anthony. Jerry. Danny. Ted. Hellswood. Graham Fraser. Whiskey with Molly. So many of you. Roy. Where's Roy Overmere? Pete Head. Too Slow Rob. Good to see Rob. Big Ed, Paul Murray, Michael C, Daisy, Kyle Taylor, Glenn FC, all on 3 along with Dan DVDW. C, my favourite island distillery, says Anthony Lambert. Saying Kilchoman. Joe Smith is saying C, but Sticks191 is suggesting that it's B, Tobermory. Peterhead is saying at least B, but maybe C as well. There's no banana skin, so I'll go with C, says Rick Johnson. Lachlan McKenzie is saying, I thought Kilchoman had their own. Big Ed is saying C. Paul Murray is less confident here. I'm going with C with the crowd, but I feel like B is likely with the profile of Leadchick in my mind. I can tell you that the distillery the most affected by Port Ellen's decision not to supply peated malt to them anymore was not Ardnamurchan. I believe it to be Crisp and Baird for Ardnamurchan. But it was B, Tobermory, and C, Kilchoman. A little bit of a boost for you there, hopefully. It doesn't matter if you said B or C, as long as you stayed away from Ardnamurchan, you're fine as you go into the picture question. Tobermory were fully reliant on Port Ellen for their peaty malt, whereas Kilchoman was partially reliant on them. But of course, as Lachlan pointed out, they did have in-house floor maltings, but they couldn't get close to the Port Ellen ppm fennel spec with their own kiln. They've found ways around that since now. Okay, picture question for you all. Here we have a still house. I'm just going to ask you something specifically about that distillery. I'm going to ask you something specifically about this distillery's official bottling. I'm going to give you a clue. The picture on the wall in the background is Arthur Bell. I hope that gives you a clue. But the official bottling from this distillery is either A, a 10-year-old with a gold crest on the bottle, B, a 12-year-old with an otter on the bottle, or C, a 15-year-old and a capercaillie on the bottle? Yes, there's an asshat in the corner. This is asshattery. You need to know the answer to two things. You need to know what distillery we're looking at here. Hopefully the Arthur Bell reference will help you out. And then you need to know what the age and delivery or the branding of that bottle is. Lachlan is saying, going with the flow. One Glassman Warner is saying Diageo, so it's B. Jimmy Legg is suggesting that otters are delicious. My son would have something to say to you, Mr. Legg. His favourite animal on the planet. Absolutely adores them. And you need to know what a capercaillie is, says Rick Johnson. Sorry, a capercaillie is a game bird. I think it's the biggest game bird in Scotland. It's quite rare. It's kind of got a big flared tail and things. It's black. Well, the males are black. I've never seen a capercaillie in real life. Daisy visited this distillery in March and asked that question 5, Roy. You need a holiday, says Danny. Occasionally we'll slip assets in a wee bit earlier. But listen, you've all managed to navigate this very, very well. Jimmy Legg is saying your son agrees with me. He does. He does. Depending on your definition of delicious, of course. Okay, I can tell you that we are looking at Blair Athol in the Southern Highlands. Yes, we are. It's a Diageo distillery, and the only official bottling from them is Flora and Fauna, of course, which is an age statement and typically some item of flora and fauna, local flora and fauna. I can tell you that 10-year-old on a Gold Crest does not exist. 12-year-old in a Gold Crest you'll find on a Glen Spey bottle. 15-year-old in a capercaillie you will find on Ben Rinnes. And 12-year-old in an otter you will find on a bottle of Blair Athol. Okay, it's going to start to get a bit tougher here on in. There's a wee picture of the delicious otter in situ there. It's a Doogie Crystal from Dramface picture, being pinched for this one. Question 6. Which iconic distillery was triple distilled until a devastating fire in the stillhouse back in 1960? Iconic distillery, triple distilled, until it was rebuilt after a devastating fire in 1960. A. Highland Park on Orkney. B. Talisker on the Isle of Skye. Or C. Ardbeg and Islay. Andrew Hamaker is saying 5 out of 5, thank you, Barflies. Graham Fraser's got his pass mark along with Anthony Lambert, Sugar Kitty. Danny Hebbington, Jake Lockhart, Falscraft Klaus, Jimmy Jazz, Lachlan McKenzie, Petehead, Joe Smith, Rick Johnson, Hellswood, Big Ed. Lots of you doing very, very well. Strong performance so far. Jimmy Legg on 5-2. Tim is saying he's got no clue. Paul Murray is saying B, but my logic is wonky at best. Andrei Bartienev. Andrei, I hope I'm pronouncing your name well. I think it might be the first time I've welcomed you to the vPub. Good to have you. Jake Lockhart is agreeing with Andrei. Both are saying B. I can tell you that, quite interestingly, this is one of these facts that I knew, then forgot, then relearned again. You know how that can happen. Maybe it's an age thing. Was Ardbeg iconic in 1960, says Rick Johnson? Well, I'm suggesting iconic certainly today. But it's not Ardbeg we're looking for, Rick, and it's not Highland Park either. Talisker, not the first fire that they had, but it was the first really super destructive fire in 1960. It required a complete rebuild. And instead of triple distilling with the rebuild, what they did is they built in more reflux and purifiers and things like that to lighten the spirit through a double distillation process. And that's what's brought us the Talisker of today. If you've ever been lucky enough to try Talisker of a pre-1960 vintage, I have not, you'll be sipping triple distilled Talisker. Jimmy Legg is saying, but they didn't shut. Well, they shut down for the rebuild only. I believe, Jimmy. That's all. Question 7. How many Scotch malt distilleries completed their build in the 1980s? So we talk about boom and bust. How many Scotch malt distilleries completed their build in the 1980s? A, none. B, just the one. C, believe it or not, there were 2. Obviously, we had the boom time of post-war, kicked off in the late 50s, 1960 onwards. And that lasted right up until about 1979, 1980. And then we had a real downturn. In 1983, we call that the year of the great culls that happened. We lost a lot of distilleries. In the mid-80s, a lot went dormant, a lot went silent. I'm asking you about distilleries that actually were built and completed that build in the 1980s. A, no distilleries. B, just the one. C, believe it or not, there were 2. You need to have a wee look at the banana skin here. Are bananas on special offer at Tesco's this week, Roy, says Anthony Lambert. There's a lot of bananas in the quiz tonight. Falscraft is saying, dare I venture B or C? C, oops, the wee banana skin there for Klaus. Gero is saying in the 80s I was a teen, no clue. I was also a teen in the 80s, Gero. Kinninvie and Speyside in 1990. Oh, okay. Speyside started to run their spirit in 1990. How is this splitting the barflies between A and C? This is weird. The attrition here is going to be massive. I need you all to switch. I need you all to follow Rick Johnson, okay? Whisky with Molly saying 1975 to 1980, there were none. Yeah, 1975 there was. 1980 there were none, and there were none actually all the way up until until Speyside Distillery completed its build in the late 1980s. Eventually, it got its act together and started to run and distill spirit in 1990, but it was built in the 1980s. This was a project that started in the 1950s. The construction started in the 60s, and it took until the 80s until it was completed, and it took until 1990 until Speyside came on stream to actually produce spirit. And now they're after a new place to go and start building or producing spirit all over again. It was B I was looking for there. I hope some of you managed to step back from the brink as we go into question 8. So this is a Dramface podcast rip-off here. I am a new distillery, and my spirit first flowed in 2020. I offer tours, accommodation, and other spirits, but no whiskey of my own yet. I have my own maltings on site. I am a short 30-minute drive from a major Scottish city. Who am I? I am A, Ardgowan. I am B, Jackton. I am C, Moffat. A new distillery starting in 2020, but now open for tours, offering plush accommodation. I can sell you sourced whiskey and other spirits, but none of my own whiskey yet. I have my own maltings on site, and I'm a very short 30-minute drive from a major Scottish city. Who am I? A, Ardgowan, B, Jackton, or C, Moffat? Does it help you if I tell you that the major Scottish city is Glasgow? Rick Johnson is just flat out asking, tell us, Graham Fraser, he's saying. And Graham Fraser, being the superstar that he is, indulges. Peter is saying, I tried to reach Moffat in 30 minutes on the motorbike. Not feasible. So B. Speed Demon Frank couldn't do it. Ardgowan only just started, and Moffat now do have their own whiskey in its own special form, says Lachlan, using a process of elimination there. I like the way you're thinking, Lachlan. Ben Demon Hunter is saying B, following Jerry Miller. Okay, through that sensible thinking, absolutely. Ardgowan have just come on making their own spirit this year. Moffat, very small distillery. I think, as Frank Peathead saying, if you did try to get there in 30 minutes from Glasgow, you'd be struggling. And it is Jackton, just over between East Kilbride and Eaglesham. It looks like, from what I've looked into, the accommodation there looks pretty special. And they're offering a whole kind of visitor experience type thing there. And they're hanging on for a wee while yet for their own whiskey, of course. But that was quite an interesting thing. I would like to maybe drop by. It's very close to me. It's ridiculous that I haven't visited yet, but I need to make a wee visit to Jackton. It looks very, very interesting. Question 9. Which of these sustainability and tradition-focused facts can be stated regarding the Eastern Highland distillery of Fettercairn? Oh, it's banana skin. It's a bit of a hattery too. I'm going to give you 3 facts, and I need you to match it to Fettercairn, okay? It is in partnership with local suppliers to exclusively source A, Scottish oak casks, B, locally grown barley, or C, all of its glass and packaging. Which fact can we associate with Fettercairn? It is in partnership with local suppliers to exclusively source A, Scottish oak casks. That literally means casks made from Scottish oak. B, locally grown barley. That's barley grown locally in the local area, the Eastern Highlands that it is located. Or C, all of its glass and packaging locally. Graham Fraser is claiming 8 out of 8. You're welcome, Barflies. Where's he going to go on this one? If life gives you bananas, make banana custard, says Anthony. This is pretty tough, pretty tough. Gero is going for B on this one. Anthony Lambert is final answer. Jeremy, are you sure? Ted Brooks suggesting B. B for barley. And Sugar Kitty saying, oops, I mistyped. I meant B. Tommy Elmer is saying B. Danny Hebington is saying B. B. I can tell you that Fettercairn has made a policy to do lots of planting for Scottish oak. It has a Scottish oak program in place in order to mature whiskey in Scottish oak, but it's not in partnership with local suppliers for exclusively Scottish oak. It is in partnership with local farmers to exclusively source barley locally. Locally grown barley is a policy, but for Fettercairn to get, I think it's a fantastic thing to do, just another step forward, another step forward. Paul Murray saying, wow. Ben Demon Hunter is suggesting banana bread instead. Okay, let's see if anybody's managed to hold on. There's been a bit of attrition here. Anybody's still on a 9 out of 9. Can anybody go for a 10 tonight? Jerry Miller is holding it together, as is Daisy. So we've got Jerry in the States, Daisy in the Netherlands. Well done, Daisy. Well done, Jerry. Danny Hebington is on a 9 as well. Fantastic. Lachlan McKenzie on a 9. Assists and 2 blubs. Where's Roy in Norway on a 9? Rick Johnson on a 9. Fantastic. Rick, I think you're going for 2 10s in a row, aren't you? Graham Fraser saying 9 out of 9. Thanks, Barflies. So maybe there's been a bit of mutual support there tonight. Danny Hamilton is saying support local farmers and butchers. Absolutely. Are you a butcher, Danny? Brilliant stuff. Okay, let's go into the asshat at the end. Let's see how it's getting together. We do have an asshat, of course we do. We have it in the form of, in the most recent whiskey boom since the year 2000, approximately 54 new Scotch distilleries have been built. It's an incredible number. Think of that. This century, 54 new Scotch distilleries. But I'm asking, how many were built in the previous boom that ran between 1960 and 1980? Not only do you need to know the answer of that, but you need to match it to what follows. Is it about the same number as A, the currently operational Islay distilleries, or is it about the same number as B, currently operational island distilleries? By island, I'm speaking about everything with the exception of Islay. Or is it C, currently operational Islay and island distilleries combined? So how many new distilleries were opened between the year of 1960 and 1980? That's the previous boom to the most recent boom. What number is that? And does it match the number of Islay distilleries today, the number of island distilleries that are not Islay today? Or does it match the number of Islay and island distilleries combined? Come on, all you 9 out of 9s. Come on, everyone looking for a high score. Maybe some of you out there need this for a pass mark. Graham Fraser is saying, what? Go big or go home. Tom Elmer is saying, no, don't do that. Don't do that, Tom. Don't do that. Dan is saying B, question mark. How many on Islay now? Jimmy Legg is saying, I can tell you, Jimmy, probably not sharing too much, but I've already mentioned it tonight. Spoke about it throughout tonight. See if this helps you. There are 10 Islay distilleries. There are 16 island distilleries. And there are combined, obviously, that's 10 and 16, 26. So it's either 10, 16, or 26. So you now have the opportunity to change based on those facts to see what you think. I'm walking home, so no way of checking, says Graham Fraser. I think it would be really, really quite tough. I don't have a list of the distilleries. I should have written down a list. Should have told you, but yeah. It's if you read the Malt Whisky Yearbook, if you read Charlie's Wikipedia and those type of things, these are the facts that you'll uncover. And I can tell you, Lachlan McKenzie is saying it's not 26, so I think so. So B. Daisy is saying B. Glenn B is saying B. Too Slow Rob is saying B. Where's Roy in Norway is saying B. Lots and lots of people are saying B. I can tell you it's absolutely true. Between the years of 1960 and 1980, the previous whiskey boom, we saw 16 new distilleries built. What does that mean? Do we have anyone still managing to hold it together for a 10 out of 10 tonight? Thank you for everyone that's hung around for the quiz at the end, even when it's pretty brutal and tough. Falsgraf is saying, another extreme ARC. I have no friggin' idea. Okay. Switching to B, says Ben Demon Hunter. I can get the list if you want, says Sugar Kitty. Thank you very much, Sugar Kitty. Let's go. Give us a B, says Paul Murray. 9 out of 10, says Dan DVDW, says not bad. That's a brilliant score. Kyle Taylor is on an 8, a great score. Lassie's on 7 this week. Fantastic, Lassie, well done. Tommy Elmer on 8. Ben Demon Hunter on 3 out of 3. What's happening there? 2 weeks in a row, says Rick Johnson, celebrating a 10. Fantastic. Desi Vleeland celebrating a 10. Wonderful stuff. Desi, congratulations. Fantastic. Where's Roy Ovimere in Norway? 10 out of 10. Superb, Rick, as well. So I've got 3 of you on 10. Come on, you dancer. Danny Hebbington is celebrating. We've got tears from Jerry Miller for a 9 out of 10. It's an amazing score. And Graham Fraser is managed. He's saying few, despite not being able to look up he's been able to grab his 10 out of 10 tonight. Falsgraf is also, with quite some help from Roy and the crowd, says, Klaus, good, congratulations on your 10, buddy. Dan is saying congratulations to the tenors, and so is Daisy. Fantastic. Jimmy Legg is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 64 months and saying, I love you, man. Jimmy, I love you too, big guy. It's wonderful to have you here, continuously having you here as well. I feel that way for everyone, whether you're here for the first time tonight, whether I see you regularly, whether I see you intermittently, it's brilliant. And even the people that I don't recognize, I will recognize you next time, I hope. Helen is saying, off to my bed. Great vPub this evening. Cheers, Roy. Thank you very much for being here, Helen. I hope you and Andy are settling in wonderfully well. I might need an address from you, so I can send you a wee housewarming card. How about that? Thank you to you all. Jerry Miller is saying congrats to the 10s. Thank you all for hanging out with me tonight. Let's get rid of this. Let's bring me back up so I can raise a wee glass and say, aye. There will be an island vPub at some point in the future to do part 3, but I think it's going to develop. I think there's lots of things happening out there on the islands. There's some whiskies still to develop, some whiskies to be released, all of those wonderful things to look forward to. And as whiskey enthusiasts, as whiskey drinkers, it doesn't really matter what's happening in the marketplace and things like that. At the end of the day, we're going to love the liquid. We're going to love the stories. We're going to love sharing all of those things. It's sad when there are job losses. It's sad when there are downturns and all of those things. But it's just so much of it is just making the best of what's inevitable, those cycles that whiskey seems to continually go through. Andrew Hammaker is celebrating being a barfly for 24 months and saying thanks for a great vPub. If you had a great vPub, Andrew, that means a lot to me. That means I've had a great vPub too. And Jeff Sugar Kitty is saying, remember to be careful with those samples. High ABV alert. So this is a reminder for the lock-in, the Patreon-only lock-in on Sunday night. It's just, there's no theme on a Sunday. There will be a quiz at the end, of course. But there's no theme. It's just me kind of catching up with everyone and getting people up to date with the behind the scenes and all of that type of thing, and just a quiet little hangout with patrons on Sunday night. Jeff, that's my plan for Sunday. And thanks for the high EBV tip-off. Lachlan is saying, thanks, Roy, and good night, folks. Michael C is saying that Aquaviti, thank you for another great evening. Thank you, cheers, Roy, and good evening all. Danny Hebington is saying, another topper of a night, pal. Thank you, Danny. And Rick Johnson is saying, you make the best whiskey talk week after week, Roy. Thank you. Rick, you can come back again, my friend. Thank you. Flattery, it'll get you everywhere. Falscraft Class is saying, yes, thanks. It was real fun, Aquaviti, Roy. Good night, and I hope to see you Sunday. I look forward to seeing you there, Class, as well. Frank is saying, and with that, I'm calling it a day. Going to hit the sack. Thanks, as always, for organising Aquaviti. And to all of you, see you on Sunday or next week. I'm going to raise this wee glass to Frank, to everybody. So there's lots of new names in tonight as well. It was wonderful to see. Cutoff Ashby as well. Hey, all thanks for making me feel welcome. Hopefully, we can make you feel welcome next time as well, my friend. I'll raise a glass to you all, say thanks for hanging out with me on another wonderful wee Thursday night. I just feel like I'm having fun. It's terrific. But I'll raise this glass to your health, remind you all that you're very dearly loved. Look forward to seeing you either next week, or maybe for some of you, I'll see you on Sunday night. And until then, Slanchiva. Cheers.